Against Hussein and welcome to the biggest React.js monster class. So in this course, we are going to be covering every single thing that there is to learn about the React.js. So this is basically a series of videos in which we cover every single thing that there is to learn about the React.js. So in the first part of this course, we covered the React fundamental such as JSX and so on and so forth. Then we covered the React hooks. After that, we cover React with TypeScript. Then we covered the UI component libraries for React.js. We also covered React Hook Form and React 19 new features. And to combine the entire first series, which was about 13 hours of content. In the second part, we cover React with Framer Motion. Then we cover React with Zustand for smaller state management. We also cover React with Redux Toolkit for advanced state management, and we also cover React with RTK query for advanced data fetching. And to combine all of that content, which was about 11 hours of content. Now in this video, which is the part 3 of this series, we are going to be covering the advanced part like React design patterns, React with 10-stack query, JavaScript unit testing, and finally we are going to be covering the React testing. And to combine all of that content, so which will be about 10 hours of content. And now in the next part, in the part 4, which will be coming in the next month, we are going to be covering React with Storybook, React Design System in Figma, React Mono Repos, React with Style Dictionary. We are going to be also building a complete design system, and we are going to be also building a complete MERN authentication flow. And maybe, this is going to be maybe, we are going to be also covering the micro frontend and also the React architecture. Maybe if we combine the part 4, so there's going to be 20 hours of content, and then we would be able to complete the React.js complete series. So before we get into the content of this course, I want to mention one thing. Please do not download my courses. I said that in the previous part of this course, so I get a lot of messages, people saying like, Hussein, I'm from Pakistan, I'm from India, I am from this country and that country, and the internet is slow and this and that. I don't know how you're watching my content, but at least I deserve this much. Like, please do not download my courses. I don't care how you watch my courses. So let's suppose like if you watch my courses totally offline, what am I getting in there? I'm not getting anything. So if I'm not getting anything, so I'll just upload like some sort of a short form content videos like a shorts. So I'll just upload there. I will get successful in no time. But that's not my point. And here I'm providing like a lot of efforts that nobody provide even in their paid courses. I don't know what to tell you, but if you want to download my courses, okay, go ahead and download them. I'm not going to say anything because I can't even do anything. But please, I'm just requesting you, like at least I deserve this much, like please do not download my courses. Anyway, so you can find all of the code in my GitHub repository. Link will be in the description below. And if you have any question, you can ask me there on my Instagram or on my X. So yeah, I'm gonna see you in the course. I want to say like love you all from the core of my heart. As a developer, you probably face the frustration of building complex dashboards, tons of code, endless hours, and headaches just to visualize your data. What if I told you there is a way to save all the time and efforts with just a few clicks? That's exactly what a Tractor Scope does. Tractor Scope is the ultimate solution for rapid dashboard and embedded analytics development. With Tractor Scope, you can seamlessly connect to your existing data source and build stunning visualization with minimal coding efforts. Say goodbye to those complex setups and say hello to the faster insights. So how does it work? Firstly, you will need to register yourself. Secondly, you will need to create your dashboard. Once you created your dashboard, then you will need to connect to your database. And don't worry, it's super simple and easy to connect to your database. All you need is to provide the name of your DB, what type of database you want to connect to, database host, port, name, username, and finally save there. Once you connect it to your dashboard and database, now you can add charts, text, images, and design. I'll choose charts for now. Here you just have to provide your query to visualize your data. And for visualization, you can choose different charts like line chart, pie chart, tables, and so much more. And not only that, you can change the chart style as well. You can change the bar type, layout, axes, and much more. If you're wondering whether a Tractor Scope will be a good fit for you, you can start totally for free by just registering yourself. No credit card required. use the product, and then if you like Tractor Scope, you can go to the pricing section and choose your plan. Now let's talk about the design patterns. So design patterns are common solution and best practices used to structure code efficiently, making it more maintainable, reusable, and scalable. But now there was just a quick definition of what are design patterns, and we usually use design patterns in different programming languages. But now the question is how in the world we are going to be using them in React.js. As you all know that React itself is a UI library that focuses on building reusable components, and design patterns provide strategies for organizing component and logic within those components to promote consistency and optimize the development. Now I know a lot of you will ask me, Hussein, why should I even care about learning design patterns in React.js? And I can give you a lot of answers to that questions. But what I want you to do is that I want you to trust me that if you learn design patterns in React.js, you will have a lot more power than just a regular React.js developer. Trust me, it's gonna give you a superpower. So yeah, let's get into the setup of this course. So now let me make a setup for our coding journey. So I'm gonna open my terminal. I'm gonna make that a bit bigger so you guys can see everything a bit better. And I'm gonna be using npm create read at latest. I'll give it the name of dp demos, like design pattern demos. I'm gonna choose React.js with TypeScript. Now let me go ahead and go to my dp demos, and I'm gonna install every single thing inside there. Now I'm gonna go ahead and go to the tailwindcss.com, click on the getting started button, go to the framework and guides, choose read, and I'm gonna copy all of these commands and place them right here. I'm gonna also hit enter so that it's gonna initialize my Tailwind CSS inside their project. I'm gonna copy this content from here, just a content, and I'm gonna open my VS Code right here. Now let me clean this up. So I'm gonna remove this public folder. I'm gonna also remove the assets folder, the app.css folder, and inside there, I'm gonna remove every single thing from the app.tsx file, and I'm gonna replace that with this RIFCE. Now let me go ahead and go to this Tailwind config file, which is this config file, and I'm gonna replace them with this new content. Now I'm gonna also copy all of these directives. Now let's just go ahead and go to index.css file, remove every single thing from there, and replace it with this new one. Now I'm gonna copy this line of code for the testing and replace that with this new one. Let me just save my file, and I'm gonna be using npm run dev, so it's gonna start my server right here. So I'll use like localhost, and now we are getting our hello world right here. Let's talk about the layout components. So layout component are strategies for organizing and composing component that manages the layout structure of a project. These components typically control the positioning and arrangement of a child element within a page, and acting as a container for other UI element or sections. So here you can see I have a component, and inside this component I have a section, and inside that section we have a div. So that specific div in which we have our content is totally dependent on the styling of a section, and here you can see I've provided a class of some layout styling. So that specific div is totally dependent on that section classes or section styles to be precise. Now the question is, how can I split that to use the layout design pattern? So if you want to split that, here you can see I'm going to be passing a children, and then I'm going to be creating a separate component in which I will put my content, and then I will pass that component as a children to that app component. I know it may sound a bit scary, but trust me, it's not. So now let's get into the coding, then you will get to know what I'm talking about. Now the first thing that I want to do is that I want to create a folder with the name of components, and inside there we are going to be defining a few components like left.tsx. Let me just zoom in a bit, and we're going to be also defining right.tsx and also the split screen.tsx file. Now let me go ahead and just write my RAFC inside this component, save my file, RAFC inside the right component, save my file, and RAFC inside the left component, and save my file. Now let me just go back and remove this return statement and replace that with this React fragments. So I'll just write a hi for now, save my file, and now we are getting that hi. So the next thing that I want to do is that I want to go ahead and go to my left and right component and provide a bit of styling to them. So I'll just write like the class name, and background will be set to teal 400, and also the height will be set to 46 rem. Now let me just save this file. I'm gonna also go ahead and go to the right component and provide the styling here. So I'll just write like class name, background will be set to totally red 400. Now let me just save this file and close them. And now what I want to do is that I want to go ahead and just remove them from here and write my split screen and close them. So for this split screen, we are going to be providing our left component and close there. I'm going to also specify the right component and close this. So now let me just save my file, and this component will also take the left weight and I'm gonna set that to like 50, and it's gonna also take the right weight, and I'm gonna also set that to not 50, but I guess 80 would be fine. Now let me just save my file and go into the split screen component. And the first thing that I want to do is that I want to destructure a few things. So we are going to be destructuring the children because we are going to be using them. We are going to be destructuring the left weight and also the right weight right here. So now I'm gonna save my file and create an interface for this. So I'll use like interface, and I'm gonna give it the name of like split screen props or something like that. And it's gonna take a children, and children will be set to this React node, and also the React node. Once again, we are going to be importing that from the React.js. And also for the left weight, it's going to be set to a number, and also for the right weight, it's going to be also set to a number. Now let me just copy a name of there and annotate my component with these props. Now let me just save my file. The next thing that we have to do is that we have to use them. But first of all, before you want to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and just destructure this left and right component. Now let me just show you that. So I want to destructure this left component and also this right component. So how can I go about doing that? Well, we are going to be destructuring that from the children. So I'll just write like left and also right, and it's going to be equals to this children. And now let me just log that to the console so you guys can see it. So I'll just write like left, and here I'm going to place that left, and I'm going to also change that to right and place that right here. So now if I save my file, go to my component, go to inspect element, go to the console. Yep, we are getting some sort of error. So I don't know why, but we are getting that error. So let's just go ahead and go to our component. Oh, that's because we have to import this. So we also have to import this right component right here. Now if I save my file, and now we are getting a left component, which you can see right here. It has the key, prop, reference, and so on and so forth. And we also have this right component as same as there. So now let me just close there. And the next thing that I want to do is that I want to just remove that from here. Now let me just remove the split screen from here. And instead of providing a div, I'm going to change that to section. Inside there, I'll just render the div, and it's going to say like left. I'm going to also duplicate that and change that to a right. So now if I save my file, so what are we getting? We are now getting these styling right here. But don't worry, we're going to be fixing that. So now you want to split this out. So you want to just make that as a side by side like left and also the right. So to do that, we are going to be passing a class name, and I'm using a Tailwind CSS. So if you're using just a pure CSS, you're going to have to do a lot of stuff. But in my case, I'm only using a Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to just write like flex, and the width will be set to totally screen. Now if I save my file, so what are we getting? We are now getting this left component, and we are also getting this right component right here, which is something that we want. And next we have to create a left width and also the right width. So how in the order we are going to be doing that? This is how we are going to be doing this. So I'll just use like const left width, and it's going to be equals to this left width. So now let me just render this left width right here, which we are now taking as a perimeter for this component. And I'm going to also specify the rem value to this. So now let's just provide a rem. I'm going to also provide the right width, and the right width will be equals to this right width right here as a prop, and we are going to be passing a rem value to there. Now let me just save my file, but still we have to use this left and also the right width. So this is how we are going to be using this. So I'll just write like a style, and here for this styling we are going to be passing first of all the width, and for each width first of all we are going to be copying this left width. Now let me just place there, then I'm going to copy the right width, and I'm going to also place it right here. Save my file, and yep, this is something which we are getting right now, which is not looking that much cool. So now let me just remove this component, and I'm going to change that to like 20 maybe. And here you can see we're now getting this sidebar. I can also change that to like 10. I guess 15 would be fine. Yeah, 15 is totally fine. And also we can totally change the right value and so on and so forth. Now we have a lot of flexibility, and we can do a lot of things. So you know what, let me just show you there. If I go ahead and go to my left component, and I'm going to remove this left from here, I'll just write like ULLI and anchor tag. And now I want them to be, I don't know, maybe 4 would be fine. So first of all, I'm going to be providing like home, and then some sort of about section. God. Then I'm going to provide the context section and also the portfolio or something like this. So now if I save my file, here you can see we are now getting all of that content right here. And if I want to change something inside the right component, I can totally do this. So I'll just go ahead and go to my right component, remove this right from here, and I'll just write like, I don't know, maybe h1 something cool, and also a paragraph with a lot of lorem ipsum inside there. And yeah, we are now getting these results right here. So this is how we are going to be splitting our UI by using the layout component. So here you can see inside this split screen, we are only using this flex prop, or you can say styling, and we are just providing a bit of width today. So yeah, this is how we are going to be splitting our UI by using the layout component. Alrighty, so now let's make another setup for our coding journey. Now I know a lot of you will ask me, Hussein, what's the point of this another setup? Well, now we are going to be working with the challenges, and we are going to be writing all of the challenges inside this newly created setup. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open my terminal, and let me just zoom in a bit so you guys can see everything a bit better, like so. And I'm gonna just write like npm, come on, in lowercase, npm create read at latest, and I'll just give it the name of like maybe dp, like design patterns challenges. And now inside there, first of all, let me just go ahead and go to the React and choose React.js, and now we are going to be choosing TypeScript. And now I'm gonna go into the dp folder, and let's just install every single thing inside there. So now then, successfully done, I'm gonna open there in my VS Code by using code dart, and this is how it looks like right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this public folder. I'm gonna also go ahead and just remove the assets folder, remove the app.css, and now let me go ahead and go to my app.tsx, remove every single thing from there, and I'm gonna just use my RFC inside there. I'm gonna also remove every single thing from this index.css, remove there. And now we are going to be running our server by using npm run dev. So it's going to run there on the localhost that port. So yeah, we are now getting our app, which is looking cool. I'm going to also go ahead and go to my tailwind.css or tailwindcss.com. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be using there or not, but I'm still making this setup for the Tailwind CSS just in case. So now let me go ahead and click on this read, and now I'm going to install it by using these commands. Let's just open there, remove there, and place my new commands right here. And it's going to install there, and it's going to also configure Tailwind CSS inside our project. So that's totally done. Now let me just hit enter. So it's going to also initialize our Tailwind CSS. Let me also copy this content, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my Tailwind config file and replace that with this new content. Let's just save our file. And I'm going to also create, or we already have our index.css file, but now let me go ahead and go to that index.css file and place these right here. And finally, to test this out, I'm going to copy this line of code, and now let me just replace that with this new one, save our file. And now let me use my npm run dev, so it's going to start running my server. So let's just refresh there, and yeah, everything is working the way we expect them to work. Before we start all of their challenges, I want to mention one thing. All of their challenges are designed by me, like no ChatGPT involved. But as you guys can guess, my English is not that much good, so I use ChatGPT to write this English for me. And plus I also don't have a lot of time, so I just copied my code, like all of the solution of the code, and I asked ChatGPT to write what we call a documentation for me. So yeah, this is what we are doing right now. So what do we have to do? First of all, we have to create a header component. So the header component will contain the dashboard title and profile logout button. Use Tailwind CSS for the styling, and also this is the task. Like first of all, we have to create our header.tsx inside the src component folder. Then we have to implement the following structure, like a header with a background color and a title on the left side, which will say like my dashboard, and a profile button, a logout button aligned to the right. So then we have to create the footer component, and the footer component will be a simple footer with a copyright message. It should be styled to stick at the top of the page. And these are the steps that you have to follow. Like first of all, we have to create our footer.tsx file inside the src components folder, and we also have to provide this as a paragraph inside our footer. That's it. Then we have to create the sidebar. So the sidebar component will be vertically sidebar on the left side, including a list of all of that items like home, settings, and profile, and so on and so forth. And next we also have to create the content component. So the content component will display the main dashboard content with some stat, like some statistic. Like if you want to do that, sure you can, but if you don't want to do that, you don't even have to do that, like the total users and also the revenue. Okay, so these are the tests that you can follow. Then we also have to create the split screen. Okay, so the split screen component will manage the layout between the sidebar and the content area. So the component should accept two children, like the left side, a sidebar, and the right side, which will be our actual content, which we are going to be creating right here for the content component. So the width of each side should be controlled through the prop. Also, you can learn more about that right here. and finally we have to just assemble or combine all of them together. So inside the app.tsx file, import all of the component you've just created, like header, footer, sidebar, and content, and also the split screen, and this is how you're going to be using there. So give it your best shot. If you can do it, that's completely okay. And by the way, you don't even have to worry about the responsiveness. I don't know. I guess ChatGPT added there. So let me just remove this step from here. And yeah, you don't even have to worry about that step. And I'm gonna also remove this line from there. So yeah, now this is looking better. So give it your best shot. If you can do it, that's completely okay. Then come back and watch the solution. And now let me give you my solution. So I'm gonna just close all of them. And now let's just start by defining our component folder. So I'll just give it the name of like components. Let me just zoom in a bit. And inside there, we're going to be creating our file, which will be our header.tsx. And now inside there, let's just use our RAFC. Inside this, our file. Let me go back so that we can see everything a bit better. And I'm going to also remove that, change that to the header, because now we are working with the header. And inside there, we are going to be using h1, which will say like my dashboard. And now underneath there, we are going to be creating our div. And inside this div, we have two buttons. So I'll just write like button, and which will say like profile. I'm gonna also duplicate there and change there to the logout. And now that's gonna be it for the header. Now I'm gonna provide the styling to this component, and you should also do that by either pausing this video and typing there manually, or you can go ahead and go to my GitHub repository and copy all of the styling from there. So I'm gonna come back in a second. Now let me save my file, and these are all the styling that you have to provide for the header component. If you want to change that, you can definitely go ahead and change that, but in my case that's looking cool. So the next thing that we have to do is that we have to create our footer. So I'm gonna go ahead and just create my footer. Come on, footer.tsx. And now inside there, let's just use our RAFCE. And now let me just save my file. And inside this footer, we're not going to be doing anything crazy, but I'll just change that to the footer. And inside this footer, we are going to be creating our paragraph. And I'm going to just provide that same HTML entity, which was and then copy and close there, in 2025 my dashboard app or something like that. Now let me save my file, and I'm gonna also provide these styling to there. So yeah, this is all the styling that you have to provide for the footer, and that's gonna be it. So I'm gonna also close there. Now let's take care of the sidebar. So I'm gonna just create a new file with the name of sidebar.tsx, and I'm gonna use my RAFC inside there, save my file, and let me just close there. And inside there, I'll just use my h1, and I'll say like dashboard, save my file. Underneath there, we have to use our UL. Inside this UL, we have to provide our li, and inside this each li, yeah, we are going to be providing our anchor tag. And let's just provide like for this first one, I'm gonna say like go to the home. Like you don't even have to do that if you don't want to do that, but I want to do that. So I'll just provide the home, and I'm gonna duplicate there like 3 times or maybe 2 times. So the first one we have is the home. Then we would have our settings, and finally our profile. So I'm going to just change that to like settings, and I'm going to also change this label to the settings. And here let's just change there to the profile. So I'll just provide my profile and change this one to the profile like so. Now let me save my file. I'm gonna go back, and here now I'm gonna provide a lot of styling to them, and these are all the styling that you also have to provide. So here you can see this is how we are going to be providing our styling for the div, then for the h1 UL, and then for the anchor tag, and for the anchor tag again and again. So that's also totally done. Now let me also close this sidebar. Next we have to create our content component. So I'll just create my content.tsx, and now inside there let's just use our RAFC, save my file, and close there. And inside this div, I'm going to be providing my h2, and which will say like welcome to the dashboard, and provide my explanation mark there. Provide a paragraph which will say like here are your stats for today. And now we are going to be providing a bit of stats. Let's just create our div, and inside there and provide another div. And inside this div, we are going to be providing our h3, which will say like total users. And now underneath there, provide my paragraph, which will say like 1 comma 2 4 5, some sort of a arbitrary number. And now underneath there, we are going to be also providing our div, and inside this div, let's just provide our h3, which will say like revenue. And now I'm gonna also provide a paragraph, and let's just provide random revenue, like I don't know, maybe I guess that's gonna be fine. So let's just save our file, and now I'm gonna go back to provide my styling inside this component. So here are my styling. Like here you can see we're now providing a styling for the div, then for the h2 paragraph, div h3 paragraph. and so on and so forth. So this is how we are going to be creating our components. Now let me just show you there. Here you can see this is how we are going to be creating our component. And now let's just assemble or combine all of them inside the split screen design pattern component. So I'll just use my RFC inside there. Let's just go back. And the first thing that we have to do is that we have to destructure a few things because we would need them inside this UI. So I'll just destructure the children. We would also destructure the left weight, which we just saw a few seconds ago. And we would also destructure the right weight, which we also saw a few seconds ago. So now let me just save my file. And I'm going to also create an interface for this so that we don't get the TypeScript errors. So let's just provide our split screen props. And inside there, I'm going to provide the children and provide there as a React node, which will be coming from the React.js, and also the React node once again. Provide a comma there. Let's just provide our left weight, WEIGHT, which will be set to a number, and also the right weight, which will be also set to a number. Okay, save my file. I'm gonna copy the name of the provide there right here, or annotate my component with these props. So now let me just save my file. Now the next thing that we have to do is that we also have to nested destructure. So we are going to be destructuring all of our stuff from the children. So we would need what do we call it, the left and also the right, which we also just saw a few seconds ago. And now underneath there we will just provide our left width and also our right width. Okay, so I'll just write like const left width, come on, left width, and it's going to be equals to this backticks, and provide my left weight right here and put that as a rem value. I'm going to also duplicate that and change this value to the right weight, WEIGHT, and here also change that to the right weight like so. Save my file. And now our TypeScript is freaking out. That's because we have to use these variables. So now let me just remove that, and inside there, let me just change that to a section maybe. And inside this section, I'm going to also provide a class names like flex, and also the flex will be set to 1. And I'm going to provide my div, and in this div we are going to be providing our left value. And now let me just duplicate that, and we are going to be providing our right value. And I'm going to also provide a bit of styling to that. So for this styling, for the width, we are going to be using our own width, which will be set to like width or left width. There we go. And also let me just put a bit of padding all around, like maybe padding all around of 4. I'm gonna also copy there right here, change there, and I guess that's gonna be fine. Now we are going to be also providing a style, and for this style the width will be set to the right. And now still our TypeScript is freaking out. Oh, it shouldn't be width, it should be width. WIDTH, there we go. And now let's just copy there, place that right here. I'm gonna also copy there, place that right here, save my file, and that's done. So now let me go ahead and go to my app component and use that inside this component. So I'm gonna just use my RFC once again, save my file. And the first thing that we have to do is that we have to import all of that components. So we have to import the header, and I forgot the names of that, but we also have to import the footer. And we also have to import the split screen because we are going to be obviously using that. And we also have to import the sidebar. And finally, we have to import the content component. Let's just go back, save my file. And this is how it looks like. So now let me go ahead and go to my div or my JSX. And I'm going to provide a bit of what the hell was that? Now let me provide a bit of classes to there, like flex, and flex will be set to a column, and height will be set to totally screen so that it will take up the entire screen. So first of all, we have to render our header, and now let me just save my file, and this is how my header looks like right here. Now we are going to be also rendering our footer. So now let me just render my footer, close there, and I'm gonna also just close there like this, save my file. And now we are also getting our footer. So if I type something at the middle, so I'll just write my h1 and something maybe, and here you can see we are now getting there right here. So now let me just close there, and which means like now we are going to be providing our sidebar and also our content. So I'll just use first of all my sidebar, and as soon as I do that, let me just provide my sidebar and close there, save my file. Here you can see we are now getting our sidebar, and now I'm gonna also provide my content component. So let's just do this, save my file. And we are also getting our content, but we also have to wrap both of these components inside our split screen component, which we just created right here. Okay, so to do that, now we are going to be using our split screen component, and I'm gonna just close there like so. I'm gonna cut that from there, place it right here, and now it requires a few props. So we have to provide the left weight, which will be I guess set to like 3 maybe, and I'm gonna also provide the right weight, which will be set to maybe 60. So let's just provide this, save my file. And this is how my component looks like right here. I know it is not looking the most beautiful UI, but yeah, it is using something called the layout component behind the scenes. So this is how we are going to be splitting our component by using the layout component design pattern in React.js. Now we are going to be learning about the list of data by using the layout component. So how in the world we are going to be doing there? First of all, we have our data folder. Inside there we have our data.ts file. So inside there I have this games array and I also have this movies array. So now let me just expand the games array. So inside there we have a few objects. So inside each object we have the game name, the game rating, game genre, and also the language. And then we have a few games right here, so you can specify your own data if you wanted to. But if you want to use mine, you can definitely go ahead and go to my GitHub repository and grab all of that data from there. And the next thing that we have is that we have a few movies. So we have the movie title, price, description, and rating right here. So yeah, if you want to get all of that data, you can definitely go ahead and go to my GitHub repository. But if you want to use your own one, you are more than welcome to do that. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to create my components folder, and inside this components folder, we're going to be defining three components. The first one will be a game info or games info rather .tsx, and I'll just use my RFC inside there, save my file. I'm gonna also create yet another component for the movies info.tsx, and I'll just use the RAFC inside this component. And finally, I'm going to be creating a component for render list.tsx file, and I'll use my RAFC inside there, save my file, and now let's get into it. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to start working on this render list. So I'll just remove this app from there, and I'll use my, you know what, let me just change that to the React fragments, and now I'll just use like render list component, and I'm going to close this. So now if I save my file, this component will take a few props which we are going to be defining in a few seconds. So the first prop it will take is going to be the data, like which kind of data you want to provide for this component, by which we are going to be iterating over through, and we will do something with that data. So in this case, first of all, we are going to be importing our games. So I'll just import games from the data component, or from the data file to be precise. So now we are going to be importing all of that games which you can see right here. So we have a lot of games. Now we are importing them inside this app.tsx file, and now we are going to be providing them as a prop for our component. So I'll just write like the data will be set to a games. We're going to be also providing a resource name. So I'll just use like resource name. Now it's going to be set to games in this case, because now in this situation we're iterating over through the games. So yeah, games would be fine. Next, we also have to pass another prompt for our component. So I'll use like data to render, how to render the data, whatever you want to call there. So this is how we are going to be rendering our data, by using this games info.tsx file. So I'll use like games info, and I'm going to just place there right here. So this is everything that you have to do. First of all, you have to create the render list component, then you have to specify the data, the resource name, and also data to render component. Okay, so that's done. Now let me just go ahead and go to this component and zoom in a bit. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to destructure a few things. So now we already know that we are providing this data, resource name, and data to render. So now we are going to be destructuring this. So data can be, yeah, I'll just provide a data right here, and also the resource name and data to render. So now let me just save my file, and I'm going to also define an interface for there. So for the interface, it's going to be a render list props, and here inside there we're going to be providing a data, and data can be basically anything as an array, and also the resource, come on, resource name, and the resource name will be set to string, and data to render will be any. So I'll just copy a name of them and annotate my component like so. Now let me just save my file, but we also have to use them inside our component. So I'll just remove that from here, and inside there, first of all, we are going to be iterating over through all of our data. So I'm going to copy a name of them and place it right here, and I'm going to use the map method, and here we have to specify the item and also the index inside there. And next, I'm going to also rename that to the item component. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that, but I want to do this. So I'm going to copy a name of that and place this item component right here. So I'll just close it like this, and I'm going to also specify the key, and the key will be that index right here. So I'm going to copy a name of them, place there right here. And next, we're going to be using a bit of weird syntax. So first of all, we're going to be making a clone of all of the props, and then for the key, we are going to be providing the resource name, and for the value, which will be set to that item right here. So now let me just explain that once again. First of all, we are providing this item component, then we are providing a key for the uniqueness, Then we are making a clone of our existing props, and now for the key we are providing a resource name as an array, and also for the value we are specifying that specific item which is coming from our data. So yeah, that's totally done. Now let me just close it right here. And the next thing that I want to do is that I want to go ahead and go to this games info component. Here you can see we're now getting our game info component again and again. So now let's go into this games info component and start working on there. So now let me just zoom in a bit so you guys can see everything a bit better. And the first thing that I want to do is that I want to destructure all of my games. Okay, so this is going to be the first thing. But first of all, I also want to go ahead and go to my data file, and here we have our game name, game rating, game genre, and also the game language. So now let me just create an interface for that. So I'll use my interface, and for that I'm going to give it the name of like games info, and here inside there we are going to be passing our games, and each game will have the game name, and that's going to be set to a string. We're going to be also providing a game rating, which will be set to a number. I'm going to also provide the game genre, and which will be set to a string. I'm going to also provide the game language, and which will be set to a string of array. Now let me copy a name of that and annotate my component with this games info. The next thing that we have to do is that we have to destructure a few things from our games. So if you don't want to destructure that, like you don't have to do that, but I want to do that. So I'm going to be destructuring a few things. So I'll just first of all destructure, what do we call it? The game name, and we're going to be also destructuring the game rating, game genre, and finally the game languages, so that we can work with this. So I'm going to save my file right now, and now I'm going to just remove the label from here. I'm going to just specify like h1 game name, and here we have to render our game name. And now if I save my file, and here you can see we're now getting our games names right here, which is looking cool. And I'm going to also write a paragraph. This paragraph will just render the game rating, and here we have to just render our game rating. And also I'm going to write a paragraph for the game genre, and let's just render our game genre right here. And here I'm going to just use my UL and provide my languages inside there. Now let's just iterate over through all of our game languages. So where in the world is that? I'm going to copy a name of the game language, or game languages, whatever you want to call that. I guess it's game languages, I'm not quite sure about that, but let me just go ahead and go to the data, and yep, this is a game languages. So I'll just destructure there, put there right here, and I'm going to use the map method on there. It's going to take a language as a L, and we're going to be annotating there as a string, and inside there I'll just use my li, and here we just have to render our L right here. So I'll just render the L. And now let me just save my file, and here you can see we are now getting the game name, rating, genre, and all of these languages right here for our specific game. I can also provide a BR if I wanted to, so I'll just write a BR, and here you can see we're now getting all of that games. So that's totally done. And you know what, I made a mistake. It should be game languages like so. Now let me just save my file. Now underneath them I'll just write HR and also the BR a few times like so. Okay, just like that. And I'm going to also render my list once again, and here now we are going to be providing a data, and you guessed it, we are going to be providing the movies data. So now let me just destructure the movies. I'm going to copy a name of that and place it right here as a data. We're going to be also providing a resource name. In this case, that's going to be set to our movies. I'm going to also provide data to render, and now we are going to be providing this movie info right here. So I'll use like movie info, save my file, and now let me go into this component and start working on that. Here you can see we're now getting our movie info again and again. So now let's start working on that. I guess this is going to be exactly the same as the games one, but first of all, you know what, we have to destructure the movies. So I'll just use like movies like so. I'm gonna also create an interface for this, so I'll use like interface movies info, and here inside there we have to define our movies, and for each movie we are going to be providing the movie title, which will be set to a string. We also have a movie price, which will be set to a number, and also the movie description, which will be set to a string as well, and the movie rating, which will be a number. So I'm gonna save my file, copy a name of that, and annotate my component with this movie info. So now let me just go back. Next we have to destructure a few things. So I'll just destructure first of all the movie title, then the movie price, the movie description, and the movie rating. From where? From the movies. So I'll use like movies right here, and I'm gonna also go ahead and go to there and make it as a React fragments. And now we have to render our content. So I'll just use like movie title, paragraph, the price, and the price will be movie, come on, movie price. And also we have a description, movie description, and finally a paragraph of ratings. And here we have to specify the movie ratings inside there. Now let me just save my file, and here you can see we're now getting all of their movies, but I'm gonna have to specify a bit of BR at the end. And yeah, now we are getting the Inception, The Matrix, The Dark Knight, and Forrest Gump, one of my favorite movies of all time. So yeah, this is how we are going to be iterating over through the list of data by using the layout component. So here you can see we have our render list. It's going to take a data as a prop, resource name, and data to render component. And now inside there, we are doing nothing, but we are just iterating over through our data and providing a specific props for our specific elements. Welcome to another challenge. So in this one, we are going to be creating our render list component, which allows us to render our items to the DOM. Your first challenge is to create a container component that can dynamically render a list of items based on the props it receives. So in this case, you will be rendering a list of products, something which I'm about to show you in a few seconds. So these are the steps. Like first of all, create a render list component, and inside there it will take a few props. So it's going to take like the data prop, which will be array of items, something which I'm about to show you in a few seconds. It's going to also take the resource name, and it will be the name of the resource. For example, like the products, like you can render the electronics, the clothing, the home goods, or something like that, something which I'm about to also show you in a few seconds. Then you have to create the main thing, which will be a data to render component. So the component there should be used to render each item, like for example the product info component. So in this component, use the method to iterate over through our data. And then here is the catch, like for each item in the list, pass the individual item to the data to render component as a prop, using the resource name to determine the key. Then we have another challenge, which will be to create our presentational component, which will be about like just rendering all of that item to the DOM. So just create a product info.tsx file, and inside this can also take like the name, description, price, and a rating, and also the image. And these data is already available to you inside my data.ts file, which I'm also about to show you. And inside the component, so display the product image, display the product name, description, and price, and also render the rating. And yeah, so you can learn more about that if you wanted to. And also I already provided you with the data.ts file, so you can use there, or if you want to create your own one, you are more than welcome to do there. Then finally we have to create our what do we call it, main component to render our list. So this is how we are going to be rendering them inside our app.tsx file. So here you can see we have this new folder, which will be our data. So now let me just expand there. Inside there we have our data.ts file. So we have a few objects. So now let me just expand there. The first one we have is electronics. So if I expand there, we have the name, description, price, rating, image, and so much more data about the electronics. So now let me just close there. We also have a clothing. If I expand there, so we have a name, description, price, rating, and image, and so much more item about the clothing. And finally we also have the home goods. Same thing will be inside the home goods. So we have the name, description, price, rating, and image, and we have a few items inside there. So basically all of their data is given to you, but what you have to do is that you have to render there, and you also have to style there correctly, but you have to use the layout component. So how in the world you are going to be doing there, that's all up to you. So give it your best shot. If you can do it, that's completely okay. Then come back and watch the solution. And here is my solution. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just define my components folder. So let's just provide our components folder, and inside there I'm going to be just creating my render list.tsx, and I'll just use my RAFC inside there, save my file. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to my app component and run this component right here inside this dev. So I'll use like render list and close there, save my file. But we're not going to be using that like this. We're going to be also providing our data to this. So first of all, we have to import the data. Then we are going to be providing them as a prop. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to only import the what do we call it, electronics, from where, from our data folder, and inside there we have our data.ts file. So now let me just copy the name of them, and the first prop it will take is a data, and now we are going to be providing our electronics to there. We also have to provide the resource, come on, resource name, and that's going to be equals to the product. And now I'm going to also provide not a comma but we also have to provide the data to render. Render and here let's just pass our product info component, which we are going to be creating in a few seconds. So now let me just go back and save my file. I'm going to also go ahead and go to my components once again, and I'm going to render my product, or was that a, yeah, product info.tsx. And now let me use my RAFC inside there, and now we have to render that component right here. So this is how we are going to be importing there. This is how we are going to be passing them. Now let me go ahead and go to my render list component, and now let's just destructure all of their props. So I'm gonna just destructure the data. I'm gonna also destructure the resource name, and finally we have to destructure the data to render, but I'm gonna also rename that to item, come on, item component, like so. Now let me just save my file, and I'm gonna go to the top and define an interface for that. So I'll just give it the name of like render, yeah, I guess render list props would be fine. Now I'll just write like data, and this is going to accept any kind of list. I'm going to also provide the resource name, and that's going to be set to a string. I'm going to also provide data to render, and it should be any. Okay, so now let me just copy a name of that and annotate my component like so. Save my file, and what are we getting? Oh, we have to use there. Now we are destructuring there, so which means like we have to use there. Now I'm going to also provide the class names, and for these class names I'll just provide like product list. I'm going to also provide these classes even. So now we have to use our data dot map to iterate over through our items. So I'll just pass my item and also the index inside there. And now let's just pass our item component like so and close them. I'm gonna pass the key, and key will be just taking that index. And now we have to spread out every single thing, and now we have to provide the resource as a name. Come on, resource name, that will be our key, and the value will be that actual item which we are now taking as a parameter right here. Okay, so now that's totally done. Now let me go back. The next thing that we have to do is that we have to go ahead and go to our product info to render that component, since we are already passing this. So now inside there it's gonna also render our product. So let's just provide our product. So we already know how our product looks like, so we can totally create our interface for this. So I'll just use like product info, and I guess props would be fine. Yeah, I'm gonna just give it the name of props, and inside there let's just provide our product, and inside this product we have to provide the name. Name will be set to string, the description will be set to string, and we're going to be also providing the price, and the price will be set to a string, and provide the rating, and rating will be set to a number. Image URL will be also set to a string. Now let me go ahead and go to the top, copy a name of there, and annotate my component like so. Let's just save our file, and now we are going to be destructuring a lot of things from these products, like let me just go ahead and go to my data.ts. So we would need to destructure the name, the description, price, rating, and also the image URL. So now let's just do that. I'm going to go here, and now let's just destructure a lot of things from the products. And now here what do we have to do? We have to first of all destructure the name, then the description, and also the price, the rating, and the image URL. Let's just save our file, and now here let's just remove them, and I'm gonna provide a bit of styling to them. So these are all the styling that you also have to provide right here. If you want to copy that from my GitHub, you can totally go ahead and just copy that from my GitHub, but if you don't want to do that, you can manually type that if you wanted to. So for the source, we are going to be passing our image URL, and for the alternative text, I'm going to just only pass the name, and I'm going to also provide a bit of classes to there for the image. So the width will be set to 52, and the height will be also set to 56. We're going to be changing that to object totally cover, so that it should take up the entire space, and I'm going to also make it totally rounded for the top of totally large, and let's just save our file. That's done. Now we are going to be also creating another div with the class of flex, and flex will be set to column. Inside there we have to just render our product name, description, and price. So I'll just write my h2, and here I'll just say like the name. I'm gonna also provide my paragraph, which will say the description. So let me just provide my description right here. I'm gonna also duplicate that and change that to the price. Provide my price right here, and I also added the styling. Like here you can see I added a style to the h2, to the paragraph, and also to this paragraph as well. Now I'm gonna go to the top, and here I am going to pass a function which will be responsible for the rating of the star, or rendering a star component to be precise. So here you can see we have our render star component, and now we have our array, and now we are iterating over through that array, and for each iteration we are now pushing this UI or this star to the star array. So that's exactly what we are doing right now, and finally we are just returning there so we can get the value from there. Okay, so now let me just hide there from here. I'm gonna copy a name of there, go to the bottom, and here we have to just render there. So I'll just use my div, and inside this div we have to just render that render stars and provide my ratings inside there. Was there a ratings or just a rating? I'm gonna copy the name of there, which is a rating, and now let me place it right here. I'm gonna also provide like what do we call it, flex, and margin for top will be set to 2. Padding on the x-axis will be set to 4. Let's just save our file and check this out. So here you can see we are now getting all of their data from the electronics. So let me just show you that. If I go ahead and go to my data, so here you can see we are now getting that smartphone XYZ, and we are also getting that 4K Ultra HD TV. Okay, so which means like this data is coming from the electronics. Like suppose if you also want to render the clothing and also the home data or home goods, so what we are going to be doing there, and that's quite simple and easy. So now let me go ahead and go to my app and just duplicate there a few times. So I'm going to duplicate there 1 and 2 times. Now we also have to destructure, what do we call it, let me just hold control space. So we have to destructure the clothing, and we also have to destructure the home goods. I'm going to copy the name of this clothing, place it right here. I'm going to also copy the name of this home goods and place there right here, and the rest of them will be exactly the same. And yeah, this is how our UI looks like, but you know what, it is looking awful. I'm gonna just make the at the center, so I'm gonna just use like my div and provide my classes. So I'll use like flex, and flex will be set to ramp, justify will be set to totally center, and items will be set to totally center. Save our file, and yeah, this UI looks cool. And that was our challenge about layout component. Now we are going to be building a model by using the layout component. So what I'm going to do is that first of all, let me just mention that we still have our data.ts file, and inside there we have all of our games and all of our movies. We are not going to be touching the movies, but we are going to be working with the games. I don't know. So next we have our component. So inside there we have our game info component. I'm going to also define the model .tsx file and use my RAFC inside there. Go to my app and register there right here. So I'll just remove that and change that as a React fragments, and then inside there I'm going to be using my model. So here for this model, inside there we are going to be passing our games info, and now for this games info we are going to be passing a data, and that data will be our games. So now let me just go to the top and import the games from where, from our data file. Then we are going to be passing there as a prop for our games info. So now let me just go ahead and go to my model and start working on that. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to destructure the children, and I'm going to annotate that as a children react node and import that from the React.js. Next we have to define our state. So I'll just go back and define the state. I'm going to give it the name of like show, and then set show. It's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to false. Okay, so let's just change there to false. Now let me go ahead and go to my UI and change there from the divs to the React fragments. And first of all, we are going to be defining a button which will say like show the model, and I'm going to also specify a bit of styling to this. So when somebody clicks on there, then we are going to be firing this function which will just say like set, and we are going to be setting that to true. And I'm going to also provide a bit of styling to there. So basically we're just providing a border, and padding all around will be set to 5, and background totally 300. And this is how it looks like right here. So now we are getting our component which is we are getting our model button which is looking cool. So now underneath there we have to start working on our UI. So if we have the show, so in that situation we are going to be showing this UI, but if they are set to false, then we're not going to be showing nothing at all. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just provide a paragraph, and I'm going to say like something cool. Okay, so if I save my file, here you can see we're now getting our something cool. If I click on that, nothing will happen because we have to provide the on click. We are already doing there. You know, let me just refresh there. Currently we are not seeing anything, but now if I click on there, now we are getting our something cool right here. So you know, let's just remove that from here, and inside there we are going to be defining a section let's just define our section. So for this section, we are going to be passing these classes. So I'll just provide like fix, and the left will be set to 0, top of 0, z index 10, width will be set to screen, height will be set to full, overflow auto, background wholly blank, and opacity will be set to 50. And also when somebody clicks on there, then we want to fire this function. So I'll just use like set show and change that to false. And inside this section, what do you want to do? We just want to define our div, and for this div, we are going to be creating a button which will just say like hide the model. So I'll just write like hide model, and which is looking cool. And when somebody clicks on this model, what do you want to do in this situation? We want to just fire this function. You want to provide the event object, and that's going to be coming from the react.mouse event, and here we have annotated the as a HTML div. Okay, so let's just provide our HTML div element, and then we're going to be just setting the event dot what do we call a stop propagation, and that's going to be it. So now if I save my file, next I'm going to also specify a bit of classes to this one. So we have a background totally white, margin for the x-axis of 10%, margin on the y-axis will be set to auto, padding all around will be set to 20 pixel, width will be set to 50%. I'm going to also provide a bit of styling to this hide model, and when somebody clicks on there, when somebody clicks on that, then you want to fire this function, which is the set show, and we're going to be setting that to false. So let's just change that to false, save my file, remove that from here, and now underneath this button, we're going to be showing these children right here. So if I save my file, and now if I click on this show model, so we are now getting our model, and we are getting all of the data from this component. So let's just go ahead and go to this component, and I'm gonna just hide there from here. Let's just comment this out. So yeah, we are now getting our model, and which is looking cool. Now let's talk about the container component. So container component are responsible for loading and managing data for their child component, and this design pattern is often used in conjunction with presentational component, also called a DOM component, to keep the UI more modular and maintainable. So how that's going to look like, here you can see I have a container component, some sort of a parent component, and inside there I have a few child component. So inside each child component, let's suppose if I want to fetch a data, so I'm going to be using a use effect for fetching the data or for the side effect, and then I'm going to be rendering that data accordingly. Then same thing will apply for the child 2 component, then for the child 3 component. And this is bad because we have to write all of that code again and again for each and every component. And how in the world we are going to be applying that container and layout design pattern to make our component reusable, and we don't have to write a lot of code. So first of all, we are going to be creating our container component, and inside that container component we can provide any kind of logic. Let's suppose if we want to fetch our data, or maybe we wanted to handle some sort of a state or anything. In this situation, I'm going to be fetching my data, so I'm going to just provide my use effect and fetch some sort of a data inside that use effect, and then I will pass that data as a children to my component. And then inside the child component, I can totally access that data by just either destructuring that, or I can just use a props, and then I will just render that data inside my child component, like inside the child 1 component, the child 2 component, and also in the child 3 component, depending upon our components. So yeah, that was just a quick theory about the container component, and if you don't get it, you don't have to worry about that, because now we are going to be writing our code, and then you will get to know what I'm talking about. Alright, so now let's talk about the container component. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and create a components folder, and inside there I'm going to create my to-do list.tsx file, and I'll use my RAFC inside there. And next I'm going to do something a bit weird, but you don't have to do that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to define yet another folder with the name of shared. You don't have to do that. Like, once again, I can't stress this enough. You don't have to do that, but I want to do that because in this component we are going to be providing a logic which we are going to be using again and again. So that's why I want to put that inside the shared component. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to define a component with the name of single to do list or single to do loader.tsx file, and I will use my RAFC inside there. Now let me go ahead and go to my app, and here we have to register there. So I'll just use like single to do loader, and then I'm going to close there, and inside there we are going to be providing our to-do list and close there like so. So basically this single to do loader is our container component, because in this component we are going to be fetching a lot of data, and then we are going to be passing that data to this to do list, and this is going to be our child component. So now let me just say that once again. So this is going to be our container component, and this is going to be our child component. So now let's just start working on our single to-do list loader. First thing first, I want to show you where in the world we are going to be fetching our data. So we are going to be fetching our data from this json placeholder.typeicode.com, and here inside there we're going to be specifically fetching our data from this to do. So I'm going to click on there and I'm going to copy the URL from there, and now let me just put there right here. I'm going to also open my terminal, and here I'm going to be using npm i and then xuse. If you don't know what xuse is, you don't have to worry about that. You can definitely go ahead and use a fetch if you wanted to, but in my case xuse would be fine. So I'll just use like npm run dev one more time. And now let's just start working on them. The first thing I want to show you is that here you can see we have our user ID, we also have our ID, and we also have the title and completed flag. So I'll just define an interface for this. So I'll use like interface with the name of to do, and inside there we have to define first of all the ID, and the ID will be set to a number. Then we have to provide the title, and the title will be set to a string, and the completed will also be set to a string. Next we have to define an interface for the children. So I'll just use like what do we call it, children right here. So I'll just write like children. So I'll just use like interface and then single to do loader props, and here inside there I'll just write like children, and I'm going to annotate that as a React node, and I'm going to copy a name of them, and place it right here. Next I'm going to also create an interface for the child component. So I'll just use like interface and then child component props, and here inside there we're going to be providing a to do. So our to do's will be either to do or null value. So now let's start working on our single to do loader component. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to create a state where we are going to be putting all of our data. So I'll just use like const and then to do's and then set to do's. It's going to be equals to this use state, and we're going to be either providing a to do or the null value to there. So now let's just initially we're going to be providing a null value to there, and now underneath there we have to fetch our data. So which means like we're going to be doing some sort of a side effect. So I'll just use like side effect right here, and now inside there we're going to be using an async, but first of all we have to provide a dependency array, and just provide an empty dependency array for there. So now we are going to be creating something called the if function, which is a immediately invoke function expression. If you don't want to do that, you know what, I'm not going to do that. What the hell. So I'll just give it the name of like fetch data. It's going to be equals to this asynchronous function, and inside this asynchronous function we are going to be first of all getting the response from where, from our await, and then xuse.get, and here we have to annotate the as a to do, and I'm going to also close that. And first of all we have to import this xuse from the xuse right here. I'm going to also cut this link from there and remove this comment from there, and now here we're going to be fetching our data by using this get method. So I'll just write like this URL, and now I'm going to save my file. And now underneath this response we're going to be using a set to do, and here we have to specify the response, not the report error, but the response dot data. Now let me just save my file right now. I'm going to copy a name of there and place there right here and execute my function. If you don't like this approach, you can definitely go ahead and just remove there and convert there to something called the immediately iffy or immediately invoke function expression. What the hell, I just kind of forgot the name of that. And I'm gonna also cut that from here. So this is how we are going to be defining our function, and this is how immediately we are going to be executing our function, like so. So yeah, this is also another way to do that. If you want to do that, you can totally do that, but if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. So this is how we are going to be fetching our data, and yeah, this is how we are going to be storing the inside our to-dos. Now let's get into the UI. So I'll just remove that from here, and now we are going to be getting the React.js and then a children from this React.js. Now let's just iterate over through all of our children, and here is a first parameter. We're going to be providing a children to them, and then we have to just use a function for iteration. So I'll just provide a children, and then what do I want to do? I want to first of all check if we have that React that is valid element. So if that specific element is valid, so we are going to be just making a clone of this. So I'll just write like child component prop, and now let me just close there, and here we have to specify a not children but just a child. So if that is the case, so then you want to just return the react.clone. We want to just make a clone of this. So I'll just use like react.clone element, and then we have to specify a child inside there. And for the second parameter, we are going to be passing their to-dos, which we are now fetching right here. Okay, so that's done. But if that's not the case, so in that situation we are going to be only returning the child. Okay, so now let me just import this React from that React.js, and that errors are now successfully gone. So yeah, this is just our single to-do loader component, and now let's just use the inside our file. So yeah, we are already using that, but I'm gonna go ahead and go to my to-do list component, and here you can see we're now getting our to-do list component, which is looking cool. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to just define an interface. So I'll just define the interface for our to-do, and here we have to specify the ID, and ID will be a number, and the title will be a string. The completed flag will be a string as well. Completed flag is boolean, not a string, so I'll just change that to boolean like so. Next, we're going to be destructuring the to-dos, so I'll just annotate there. But first of all, let's just define our interface for the to-do list props, and here inside there, let's just provide our to-do. So it's going to be either a to-do or null value. Okay, so I'm going to copy a name of there and annotate my component with this to-do list props. I'm going to save this file, and finally let's just destructure that to do and also the ID. So I'll just destructure the ID and also the title. From where? From the to-dos. So either gives us all of their to-dos or gives us an empty object. So now let's just use the inside our UI. I'll just remove that from here. If we have the to-dos, so in that situation we're going to be showing one UI. But if that's not the case, so then we're going to be showing another UI. So I'll just provide a paragraph, and I'll just say like loading dot dot dot, and I'm gonna also close this paragraph like so. Okay, so now if we have the to-dos, then we want to just get a div, and inside this div I'll just provide a paragraph, and it's gonna say like a strong tag to do ID or something like that, and here I'll just render that ID right here. And also I'm gonna provide the h1, and it's gonna say like strong once again to do title, and then here we have to just render that title right here. Oh my god, that was a lot of explanation. So now let me just refresh there. So we are getting a to-do ID and also the title, but we are not getting the actual value out of there. You know what, let's just log this to-dos to the console. So I'll just use a to-dos, open my console. Okay, we are getting an array, and inside this array then we have our objects. God damn it. Yep, so I'm just iterating over through all of the to-dos, and I'm getting each of the to-do and then rendering the to-do.id. And now we are getting all of the to-do IDs. I can also get other stuff, so I'll just write this div, not device, but a div inside there. Let's just render over h1, and for the paragraph I'll select to do body. Was that body or something else? Title, there we go. So I'll just write a title, and here we have to use our to do dot title. If I close this, save my file, so we are also getting their title, and I'm going to destructure the ID and also the title out of there, and select both of them, remove there, and yep, we are now getting there. Here I'm gonna also annotate the as a to do, and yeah, that's looking better. So this is how we are going to be creating a container component, and this is how we are going to be passing a data to there. But this is not the better way to do stuff. Like sure, we are getting this data from this URL, but let's suppose if you want to get a specific item, like maybe item 1, like to do 1, or maybe if I wanted to get like the comments, or maybe the post or something like that. Now let me just show you these endpoints right here. So if I go back, let's suppose if I want to fetch that data from either the post or comments or albums, photos, to-dos or users, how in the world am I going to be doing there? Well, for that we have to refactor our code. Time for the quick refactor. So what I'm going to do is that I'm gonna make it so that we can fetch the data by specific ID. So I'll just write like to do ID, and here I'm gonna specify like either 1, 2 or some ID right here. So in this case I'm gonna only specify 2. I'm gonna save this file right now. Now let me go ahead and go to this single to do loader, and we are going to be getting that ID right here. So I'll just write like to do ID. I'm gonna copy a name of there, and I'm gonna make it as a template literal because we are going to be placing our ID totally dynamically. So I'll just place my to do ID right here. If I check this out, so now let me just open there. Here you can see it's gonna give us okay, it's gonna give us an error. So let's just refresh there. You know, let me just go ahead and go to this to do list, and now I'm going to comment this line out, and I'm gonna go ahead and just log to the console there to do. So if I just do this, save my file, and here you can see we're now getting a specific item based on that ID. So we are now getting like the ID of 2, the title of some random title, and also the user ID will be set to 1. I'm going to just go ahead and cut that from here. I'm gonna also remove there. I'm gonna uncomment there, and now let me just log to the console that ID and title. So I'll just write like ID and also the title, and now let me just save my file. Let's just refresh there, and here you can see we're now getting the ID and also the title. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to render this. I'll just remove it from here and I'm going to write return statement. If we have the to-dos, in that situation show one UI, but if we don't have the to-dos, then you want to just show a paragraph which will say like loading dot dot dot. Okay, so I'll just write like div, and inside this div we are going to be writing a paragraph and then a strong tag, and it's going to say like to do id, and I'm going to render that to do id right here, just a id. And now underneath there we're going to be creating h1, and inside there let's just write our strong tag once again, and I'll write like to do title, and then I'm going to render the title right here. So I'll just write like title. Now let me just save my file, and it should be to do's. Now let me just save my file, and here you can see we are now getting our to do based on that specific ID. So now I can go ahead and just change that to like 3 maybe. So, and now let's just refresh there, and it's going to give us the ID of 3. It's going to also give us that random title. So I can just duplicate the like how many time I want. So I'll just duplicate the like 3 times, and I'm going to just provide you know what, this is going to be 1, this is going to be 2, and this one will be 3. Now let me just save my file. Now if I just refresh there, so we are getting a to do ID of 1, then 2 and 3. So yeah, this is how we are going to be fetching our data by using a specific ID. Time for the refactor number 3. So here you can see in this situation we are only getting our data from the to-dos resource. But let's suppose if you want to get our data from either the post or comments or albums, so how in the world we are going to be doing there? And to do there, we are going to be defining yet another file. And by the way, I'm gonna also just write like to do id right here, and I'm gonna set that to number. So it's gonna just remove that TypeScript error from here. So that's totally done. I'm gonna also close this file, and now let me just go ahead and go to my shared folder once again. And now we are going to be creating a resource loader.tsx, and I'll write my RAFC inside there, save my file. And now let me go ahead and go to my app and remove all of that stuff from here, and I'm gonna specify the resource loader from our components folder, and inside them we're not going to be closing it like this. We're going to be closing it like this because we want to provide our children's inside there. So for the children's we are going to be providing our to-dos list, and here is going to take a few props. So I'll just provide like first of all the URL. You can either give it the name of like URL, but in my case I'm going to specify like resource URL. And for the resource URL, first of all we are going to be fetching our data from the to-dos, and then for the first to do, and I'm going to also specify the name. So I'll write like resource name, and here we have to specify the resource name as a to do. I'm going to also duplicate, or you know, we're going to be doing that in a few seconds, but now let me go ahead and go to my resource loader, and now let's just take care of that. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to destructure a few things. So first of all, we're going to be destructuring the resource URL. So I'll just write like resource URL, and also the resource name, and finally the children. So I'll just write a children right here. Now let me just go to the top and define the interface for what, for the resource loader props. And inside there, first of all, we have to provide our resource URL, and here we have to set that to string. We also have to provide the resource name and set that to string, and for the children it's going to be set to React Node. Okay, so now let me just hit enter. I'm going to copy the name of there, and now let me place there right here as a resource loader prop. Now let me go back and save my file, and that's totally done. The next thing that we have to do is that we have to create a state for storing our data. So I'll just write like state. You can give it any name that you prefer, and then set state, and it's going to be equals to the use state. It's going to take any kind of data, and we have to specify the initial value of null to there. That's also done. Next we have to fetch our data. So to fetch our data, we are going to be doing this side effect. So for that we have to use the use effect. Inside there we are going to be doing our data fetching, but first of all we have to provide our dependency array, and for the dependency array I'm going to specify the resource URL right here. Okay, so I'm going to use my if function once again, and here I'm going to specify the asynchronous the async function. And for this async function, first of all we are going to be getting the response. It's going to be equals to await.axios. Let's just get our axios from our axios library, and we're going to be getting that data from this URL. So I'll just write like https and then json placeholder.typeicode.com and then /, and now we have to render our resource URL. So I'm going to copy the name of there, and now let me just place it right here. Okay, and it's going to give us some sort of a data. So now we have to set that data to our state. So I'll write like response dot data, And now let me just save my file. This is how we are going to be fetching our data, and this is how we are going to be storing them inside our state. The next thing that we have to do is that we have to use our React children. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make this as a React fragment, and now inside there, first of all, we are going to be using React.children, not clown but children. There we go. And first of all, we have to grab the React.js from the React library, and now we have to iterate over through there. And I'm going to specify children, and here we have to provide a child inside there. And now we have to check if we have the React.is valid element. Come on, is valid element. So in that situation, we are going to be first of all writing a children, and then we have to clone there. So I'll use like React.clone element, and here we have to specify the child. And now here we are going to be passing our resource name as a key, and then for the value we are going to be setting that to state. So this is how we are going to be cloning that element if it is a React valid element. But if it's not, so in that situation we are going to be only returning the child. So I'll just write like return child and save my file. Now let me just go ahead and go to my app and see what's wrong. Okay, so we are not getting any errors. Let me just refresh it. We are getting our data, which is cool. Yeah, we are getting our data, but we are not able to render there. So I'm gonna go to the to-do list app. Let's just log their to-dos to the console. Save my file right now. Okay, so everything is undefined. Oh, it shouldn't be to-dos, it should be a to-do, just a singular to-do. Okay, and yeah, I'm going to remove that s from there, and I'm gonna also remove it from there and from here. So now let me just save my file right now, and here you can see we're now getting our title and also our ID right here, which is looking cool. Now I can also go ahead and just go to my app, and I can just change that to like maybe 2 or something like this. So it's going to change that to 2, which is working totally fine. But now I'm going to also fetch my data. First of all, let me just write HR and then BR. Now we have to fetch our data by using some different resource. So I'll just use like resource loader once again, and I'm going to close there. And inside there we are going to be rendering another component which we are going to be creating in a few seconds, which will be a comments list. And now it's going to take the resource URL, and for the resource URL we're going to be fetching our data from this comment. So I'm going to just click on there, and I'm going to copy this entire thing, or you know what, let me just copy these comments from here, and now let me just place it right here. So comments, and we want to get the first comment, and I'm going to provide the resource name, and the resource name will be set to comments. Now let me go ahead and just create this component. So I'm going to copy a name of that and just create this component right here. I'll use my RAFC inside there, save my file, check this out. Let's just refresh there, and yeah, we have to take care of that first of all. Now let me create the interface. So I'm gonna go ahead and first of all we have to take care of the post ID, then the ID, name, email, and body. So I'm gonna go to the top. Oh my god, what the hell did I just do? And I'm gonna define the interface for the comment, and inside there we have to provide the ID, and ID will be a number, the name will be a string, the email will be also a string, and the body will be a string as well. Next, I'm going to define an interface for the comments list props, and inside there it's going to take the comments. It's going to be either the comments which we just defined. So let's just provide our comments. So it's going to be either the comments or none. So I'm going to save this file. I'm going to copy a name of that, and now let's just annotate our component. And first of all we have to destructure the comments, then we have to annotate our component like this. So now if I log to the console that comments, so let's just log that to the console and check this out. So let's just refresh there, and let me go ahead and go to my console like this, and here you can see, oh, we are getting some sort of error. So comment list is not defined. Oh, that's because we have to first of all import there. So I'll just go ahead and just import there like this, and yeah, now it is defined. So now let's just refresh there, and here you can see we are now getting first of all the user ID, and also the completed flag, the title, and the user ID once again. What the hell is that coming from? So we are getting undefined, then we are getting the data. This is not something that I want. Let's just go to the to-dos and remove that from there. Let's just close there and refresh there once again. So we are getting an undefined. I don't know why, but we are getting an undefined. Oh, I just made a mistake. Here you can see I'm providing a resource name. It should be a resource resource URL. You know, let's just copy there and place it right here, and this one will be a resource name instead. Now let me just save my file, and now let's just refresh there, and here you can see it's going to give us all of their data. So we are now getting the body, email ID, name, and post ID. which is looking cool. So now let me just go ahead and go to this component and remove that from here. And now we are going to be destructuring that ID, the name, and also the email and the body from where? From the comments like so. Otherwise, if that's not the case, we are going to be setting that to empty object. And now finally, we just have to render this. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to provide a paragraph, and inside the let's just provide our comment ID and render our ID right here. I'm going to also specify the h1 maybe in this case, and let's just provide our strong tag, and then the comment name, and here we have to render the name. Another paragraph which will say strong, and then comment email, and here we have to render the comment email, and then finally a paragraph for us with a strong tag, and then the comment body, and here let's just render the body. I'll just write a body right here, save my file, and here you can see we are also able to fetch our data from the to-dos and also from the comment resource as well. So yeah, this is how we are going to be making our resource loader. It's going to take the URL, it's going to also take the name and also the children, and this is how we are going to be fetching our data based on that specific resource URL. Time for the final refactor. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and go to the shared folder and define the data source.tsx file and use the RFC inside there. Go to my app and remove all of that stuff from here, and I'm going to also remove all of them from here just like that. Now let me go ahead and render my data source component right here, and I'm going to close there, and here it's going to take the to-do list which we already defined. I'm going to close there. Now in this situation, it's going to take a few props. So it's going to take the get data function, which will be an actual function which we are going to be creating in a few seconds, and it's going to also take the resource name. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to only specify a to do, because in this case we're going to be working with the to do. Now let me go ahead and define some sort of a function which will allows us to fetch our data for this prop. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to the top, and I'm gonna specify like server, come on, get server data, and it's gonna take the URL as a prop, I mean like as a parameter, and I'm gonna annotate it as a string. And now here I'm gonna use the asynchronous function, and now inside there we're going to be getting our data. So I'll just store the inside the response, and I'm gonna use like await and Axios, get the Axios from the Axios library, and we're going to be getting them by using this URL right here. And finally we just have to return our response.data, and then it's going to be aired. I'm going to copy the name of them, and now let me just place that function right here. And now this function will allows us to fetch the data. So I'll just write like https, and here we have to provide like JSON placeholder dot type. Come on, type icode like so, not a type but just a type or tpcode.com, and then / to do's and then 1. I'm going to save this file right now. Now let me go ahead and go to this component and start working on this. So now let's just go there. And the first thing that I want to do is that I want to destructure the get data function. It's going to be equals to this initial value of function. So I'll just set that to this empty function. And also we are going to be providing a resource name and also the children as well. So now let me just save my file, go to the top and define an interface for this. So I'll just use like interface data source props, and here inside then I'm going to specify the get data function, and this is going to be optional function, and we have to just return the void from there. I'm going to also specify the resource name, and for the resource name it's going to be set to string, and also for the children there's going to be a React node. Okay, so now let me just copy the name of there and annotate my component with these props like so. And the next thing that we have to do is that we have to create our state. So I'll just use like const and then state and set state, and it's going to be equals to this use state function, and I'm going to specify the null value to that as the initial value. It's going to take any data. Now finally we have to use the use effect fetching our data. So I'm going to go there, and first of all for the dependency array I'm going to specify the get data function, and inside there we have to use our IFI or immediately invoke function expression. So I'll just specify my IFI right here, and const data, and it's going to be set to await and get data function. I'm going to also set the state, and here we have to specify our data inside there. Now let me just remove that from here and change that to React fragments, and inside there we have to specify all of that stuff. First of all we have to get our React from React.js, and now we are just iterating over through there, and now we are checking if we have the valid React element, then we want to just make a clone of there. But if that's not the case, we want to just get the children. Now let me just save my file, and yep, we are getting our data based on that specific URL, and we can totally and definitely change that to like 12 or something like that. It's gonna also gives us our data based on that specific URL. So yeah, I can also duplicate there. So let's just duplicate there, and I'm going to provide a BR and also the HR for the horizontal line. And I also want to fetch the data from these comments. So here you can see we're now getting our data from the comments and the first comment. And I'm going to also change that to the comment like so, or comments rather, and render my component, which will be a comments list. Now let me just save my file, and here you can see we're now fetching our data from the to-dos and also from the comments. So yeah, this is how we are going to be fetching our data by using this get server data function. Okay, so time for another challenge. So in this one, we are going to be creating our container component for fetching our data, something which we just saw a few seconds ago, but now this is a challenge. So what do we have to do? Your goal is to implement a reusable data fetching component in React.js that can fetch the data from the external API and provide it to its child component. And this should be done with proper error handling, conditional rendering, and flexibility in how data is passed down to its child component. So how the steps gonna look like? This is how the steps gonna look like. So first of all, we have to create a data source component, and obviously you can read through all of that if you wanted to. Then we have to create our product list component in which we are going to be rendering our data. So I'm going to be fetching my data by using Axios from this fake store API, and you are more than welcome to fetch your data from anywhere that you prefer. So yeah, if you want to give it your best shot, you totally can, but if you can do it, then that's completely okay. Come back and watch the solution, and now let me give you my solution. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create two folders. So the first one will be for the components, and the second one will be for the shared. You don't have to create there, but I want to create there. So now inside this shared component, inside this shared folder, we're going to be creating our shared or data source components. So I'll give it the name of like data source.tsx. And now inside there, let me just use my RAFC, save my file, and now let me go ahead and go to my app and use that right here. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to go to the top and I want to import this. So I'm going to just import the data source from that components folder. And now inside there, let me just remove this app from here, and I'm going to just provide like h1 is going to say like welcome to the fake store or something like that, because now we are going to be creating our fake store. I'm going to also provide the margin to the top of 20 pixel. Now let me close there. Now underneath there, we have to call our components, which will be our data source. I'm going to call it like this, and it's going to take a few props. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be passing this function which will allows us to fetch our data, so which will be a get data func. Okay, so now let me just paste that, and now we are going to be passing the name of like get server data, and let me just go back, and now here we are going to be passing our API, which will be our HTTPS, and then fake store api.com/products. Okay, so if you care about that, you can just hold control and click on there, and now it's going to give you all of that data right here. So we have the title, we have ID, and we have the price and a lot of this data. So now let me just close that, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to also provide the resource name right here. So I'll say like resource name, and that's going to be equals to the product. So let's just save our file, and now here inside there we are going to be creating yet another component inside this components folder, not inside the shared folder but inside the components folder. I'm going to give it the name of like product, or yeah, I guess product list.tsx would be fine. Let me just zoom in a bit. So this is how we are going to be creating or naming our file. So now inside there, I'm going to just use my RAFCE, save this file. Let's just go to the app. I'm going to go back so that you guys can see everything a bit better. And now inside this data source, I'm going to be passing my product list, and now let me just close there. So as soon as I do that, now let me save my file, and that's it. Now we have to define this function to fetch our data, but the first thing that we have to do is that we have to go to this data source component and destructure all of that props. So let's just go there, and here inside there, what do we have to do? First of all, we have to destructure the get data function, and I'm gonna also provide the initial value of this empty function today, And then I'm gonna also destructure something called the resource name, which we are also providing. And now we also have to destructure the children. So now that we successfully destructured there, but we also have to define a TypeScript interface for that. So I'll give it the name of like interface and then data source props. And now inside there we are going to be passing our get data function, and I'm going to make that like totally optional. And here let's just pass our arrow function, which will only return the void. I'm going to also pass the resource name, and that's going to be set to a string. And then finally we have to pass our children, and that's going to be the React node, which will be coming from the React.js. So now as soon as I do that, it's going to import there from the React.js. Now let me just copy this name, and I'm going to annotate my component with these React props. So let's just save our file, and this is how we are going to be annotating our component by using this data source props. So now inside there we have to define our state and also our errors. So I'm going to just go ahead and define my state and also my set state, and it's going to be equals to the use state. And the initial value I'm going to paste like null to that, and basically it's going to take like anything that you can provide right there. And I'm going to also paste the error and then set error, and it's going to be equals to the use. Come on, oh my god, use state. There we go. And here we have to paste the initial value of null to that. So it can either take a string or it can take a null value as well. So now let's just save our file, and now underneath there we have to use this function to fetch our data. And by the way, we are going to be also creating this function inside this app, but we are going to be doing that in a few seconds. So now inside there, now we are going to be doing a side effect. So in that situation we are going to be using the use effect. Okay, so now let's just provide there, and for the dependency array I'm gonna only provide that prop which we are now getting, like which will be the get data function. Like whenever this function changes, then we want to re-render this component or this use effect, whatever you want to call that. And now inside them I'm gonna paste the iffy, like immediately invoke function expression. But if you guys don't know that, so you can definitely just create your function and call that. So I'll just write like async, and here I'm going to pass my function inside there. And now let's just pass our try and catch blocks. So for this try, let's just go back. For this try I'm gonna just get my data by using this get data function, and I'm going to execute that. Now it's going to give us some sort of a data. So now we have to store the inside the variable. So I'll just give it the name of like const data, and it's going to be equals to this function. I'm going to also set there to my state, which will be set to this data. But if we got some sort of an error, so in that situation we are going to be just setting that error, and I'm going to say like failed to fetch the data. And now let me just save my file. That's totally done. I'm gonna also hide that, and the next thing that we have to do is that we have to go to the UI and start working on that. And I'm gonna also make that as a React fragment instead of the div. Now here the first thing that we have to do is that we have to check for the error. So if we got the error, so in this situation we are going to be rendering the error. But if we don't got any error, then we're going to be showing some sort of a UI. So if you got some sort of error, so I'll just write a paragraph, and I'm gonna say just render that goddamn error. Okay, so let me just change that to error. And here we have to provide the class name, and I'm gonna just provide like, I don't know, maybe text red would be fine, red. And I'm gonna just choose this 600 right here. Okay, because that's gonna be it for the error. And now if that's not the case, so then we want to iterate over through all of the children's, and I'm gonna use the map, and here we have to pass the children like all of them, and then we have to pass the child as a initial value parameter. And now inside then we have to check if we have the React that is valid element, like if the element is the React element. So in that situation, what do we have to do? In that situation, we have to just return our React.clone element. We have to just make the clone of this existing element, and we also have to pass our child inside there. And now here, now we are getting this error because we also have to import the React.js from the React. So I'll just import the React, and these errors are now successfully gone. Okay, so now here I'm going to pass the keys and values. So for the key, I'm going to pass the resource name, and the value will be set to the state. Okay, and now here let's just return our data. So I'm going to just return only the child. And now let me just save my file, and that's totally done. So this is how we are going to be defining our data source component. And now let's just use them inside our app component. We are already using that right here, but now we have to create this function. So I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to make this function right here. So I'll just give it that same name, and it's going to take the URL. So let's just pass our URL, and that's going to be a string. And now let's just make that as an asynchronous function, and here inside there we have to just use our Axios. But first of all we have to install the So I'm going to use npm i and then axios, so it's going to install the inside my dependency or inside my project to be precise. And now let's just use our npm run dev, so it's going to just run there. Now I'm going to be using the await, and I want to use the axios. And by the way, you are not just limited to use the axios, you can use the fetch if you wanted to, but in my case I'm going to be using axios.get to get my data by just passing this URL. And now let me just use my let me just store it inside the response variable, and now it will freak out because we have to import the axios from the axios, and finally we have to just return the response.data, and that's it. Okay, so that's totally it. So the next thing that we have to do is that we have to go ahead and go to this product list component and render our data properly. So this is how my component looks like. And now I'm gonna just create an interface for my data. So I'll just give it the name of like product, and now inside there we are going to be expecting the ID, and the ID will be set to a number. We will be also expecting the title, and the title will be set to a string, and we can also expect the description, and that's going to be set to a string as well. We can expect the price, that's going to be a number, and also the image, and that's going to be set to a string. Now based on this interface, now we are going to be creating yet another nested interface. So either use that or use a null value. So I'll just give it the name of like product list props, and inside there let's just use our products. So either use our product list, which we just defined right here, or use the null value. Okay, like nothing at all. So now let me just paste this null value. I'm gonna copy the name of there. Now let me go ahead and go to my component, and let's just destructure our products. So I'll just destructure my products, and I'm going to annotate my component with these products. Okay, so now here I'm going to remove this entire JSX, and I'm going to just say like if we have those products, so in that situation show this UI, but if you don't have those products, then show this another UI. Okay, so now for this else class, I'm going to just create a paragraph, and I'll just say like, I don't know, maybe loading products dot 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 would be fine. And I'm going to also provide the class names, and class name I'm going to just copy and place a few styling. So I have to provide this loading message right here. And now here for this first class, now we have to render our content. So I'll just create a div, and inside this div I'm going to give it the class of like product list container. Come on, container, container, there we go. And I'm going to also provide the UL. And now inside this UL, let's just go back. We're going to be iterating over through all of their products, which we are now getting right now. So now let me just paste that right here and use .map. And here let's just pass our product. And here inside there, I'm going to just pass all of my products. Let's just pass our li. And for this li, I'm going to be passing a key, and the key will be coming from product.id. I'm going to also provide the class name, and which will be set to product card. And inside this li, I'm going to provide my h2, which will just render the product.title. Let's just check this out. So now let me just save my file. And here you can see we are now getting all of the products title, which is looking cool. And now the next thing that we have to do is that we have to create our paragraph. And now we are going to be providing our product.description. I'm going to also provide the product price. So let's just provide our product.price. And I'm going to also pass my dollar symbol right there. And here let's just also pass our price here. And finally the image, so that we can see the image as well. So I'll use like product.image. And here we also have to pass the alternative text, so which will be set to product.title. Let's just save our file, and this is how everything looks like. And I know it will look huge, and there we go. We are now successfully getting all of their data, but the next thing that we have to do is that we have to style there. I already prepared the styling for there. If you care about those styling, you can definitely go ahead and copy that from my GitHub repository. But if you don't, so you don't even have to worry about that. So now let me just place that right here, save my file. And this is how everything looks like. So as you can see, first of all, we are now getting the title, then the description, then the price, and then finally the image for each of these products right here, which is looking cool. And yeah, that was the entire challenge which we just solved. Now let's talk about the control and uncontrolled design patterns in React.js. So a control component is a form element whose value is controlled by React state, and React handles the state of the component and updates it based on the user input through event handler, like on change event handler, for example. So yeah, that was just a control component. And now let's talk about the uncontrolled component. Uncontrolled component is a form element that maintains its own internal state, and React does not directly manage or track the values. Instead, we interact with the form element using refs to access its value when we need it. So yeah, that was just a quick definition of uncontrolled and control component. And now let's get into the code, then you will get to know what I'm talking about. Time to create the uncontrolled form component. So I'm gonna go ahead and create my components folder, and inside there we're going to be creating an uncontrolled form.tsx file. I'll use my RAFC inside there, go to the app and register this component right here. So uncontrolled form component, save this file, and now let's just start working on there. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to define a form. I'm going to remove that from here and change that to a form. This form will have a few input fields, so I'll just write like input field with a type of text, and also the class name will be set to border, name will be set to name, and the placeholder will also be set to name. I'm going to duplicate this line of code and change the class names, change the name to be edge, and also the placeholder to edge. So I'm going to duplicate this line of code once again, change the type to text, and also the name to hair color, and the placeholder to hair color once again. And finally, I'm going to be creating a button by using the input field. So I'm going to provide the type of submit to there, and for the name we're going to be also providing a submit, and for the placeholder it's going to say submit. Now let me just save my file, and that's everything that we have to do. But first of all, we have to just create a few refs. We're not going to be creating a state because then that will be a control component. We are going to be creating a refs, which means like this is an uncontrolled component. So I'll just create first of all the name input, and it's going to be equals to the ref, like the use ref, like so. And I'm going to annotate that with the HTML. Come on, HTML input element. I'm going to also close there, and the initial value will be set to null. And just like there, I'm going to also create another variable for the edge input. It's going to be equals to the use ref once again. And here for the initial value, we're going to be providing a null value. And this one will be HTML input element like so. I'm going to also duplicate there and change that to the hair color input, and it's going to be equals to this ref. Now first of all, let me just bind those refs. So I'll just use like for the ref, name input ref, and then for the edge we're going to be providing a reference once again, and here we have to specify the edge input. And finally for the hair, we're going to be providing a ref of hair color input. So now let me just save my file, and finally we have to just create a function which will be when somebody submit this form. So we want to fire this function which is a handle submit. And now let's just create this function right here. I'm going to be using const handle submit, and here we have to specify the event object, and let's just provide our HTML form element like so. And I'm going to close there. We're going to be only returning a void from there. We don't have to do that, but I want to do that. Okay, so let's just use our event.prevent default and just prevent the default behavior, which is a refresh. And also we have to provide the name input field.current and edge input field.current and the hair color current. So if that's the case, in that situation we just want to log to the console like name input field dot current value, and I'm gonna also just duplicate there like 3 times. We don't want to do anything else with there, so I'll just use like edge input field and then the current value from there, and then from the hair color input field, and we want to get the value from there. And here you can see we're now getting our input field. So now let me just go to the console and let's just refresh there. I'm going to specify first of all my name, and also my age is 22, and then the hair color is black. And now let me just click on this submit, and it's going to give us all of that data. So here you can see we are not using any state, so which means like this is an uncontrolled form, or you can say this is an uncontrolled component. So how in the world we are going to be making a control component? Let's just create our control component. So I'm going to go ahead and just create controlled control form.tsx will be fine. I'll use my RAFC inside there, go to the app, comment this line out, and provide my controlled component or form, save my file. Yep, we are getting our form, so let's just close there. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to start from the state. So I'll use like name and then set name. It's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be empty string. I'm going to also provide the edge and then the set edge. It's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be empty string. And then for the hair color, and then set hair color, and it's going to be equals to the use state and the use state, and the initial value will be empty string. And then for the final one, which will be errors, so I'll use like set input error, and then set input, or it should be name input error, and then set name input error, it's going to be equals to this useState, and the initial value will be empty string. Now let me go ahead and go to the form. So I'll just change that to the form, and here inside this form we are going to be defining our input field. So the type will be set to text, the name will be set to name, and the placeholder will also be set to name, and the value will be coming from the name. Okay, so I'm gonna also provide the on change event handler when somebody try to type something inside there. So you want to just get this. So I'll use like event.target.value. I'm gonna save this file right now. And for the classes, we are going to be providing a border, and margin all around will be set to 2. Now underneath them, let's just define our input field for the type of number. And here we are going to be also providing a name of age, and the placeholder will also be set to age, and the value, the value will be set to age as well. So when somebody try to type something inside there, we are going to be firing this function which is a set age, and here we have to specify the event.target.name, value, but we also have to convert that to a number like this. Or you know what, we are going to be using a number constructor, and now let's just convert that to the number. Okay, what the hell. So we are going to be also providing a border, and margin all around will be set to 2. Now underneath there, we have to define our input field once again, and the type will be set to text, the name will be set to hair color, and I'm going to also specify the placeholder of hair color. And now here we have to provide the value, and the value will be hair color. And also when somebody try to type something inside there, we just want to fire this function which is a set hair color, and the event.target.value inside there. Okay, so for the classes, it's going to be set to border, margin all around will be set to 2, and finally let's just create our button which will say submit. There we go. I'm going to also render this error if we have there. So what I'm going to do is that if we have the input error, in that situation we only want to show this paragraph which will say like name input error, and here we have to provide our class names, and the text will be set to totally red of 500. Now let me just save this file right now, and I'm going to also use the use effect for this error. So I'll use like the use effect because we want to do our side effect inside there. And for the dependency array, we are going to be only providing a name, and let's just check if we have the name length is less than 2 characters. So in that situation we are going to be getting like set name input error, and here we have to specify like name must be at least 2 characters or long. And if that's not the case, so we just want to write like set name input error, and let's just set that to empty string. Or we can also use a ternary for that. So I'll use like dot length is less than 2 if that's the case. So we just want to copy this line of code and place that right here. But if that's not the case, so I'm gonna just only copy this line of code and place that here. And now let me just comment these line out like so. I'm gonna save this file right now, and here you can see we are now getting our error. So if I just write like my name, that error will be now gone. I'm gonna also specify the age of 22, and the hairs will be set to brown in this case. If I click on this, it's gonna just refresh there. So now this component is a control component, and why is that? Because we are now controlling there by using the useState. And on the other hand, this component is not a control component because we are just only referencing to the value, but we are not controlling that value. Okay, so time for another challenge. So in this one, basically you're going to be creating only one form component, but you have to create that by using the control and also the uncontrolled component design pattern which we just saw a few seconds ago. So basically you just have to create a simple form which will have the following field like the first name, last name, email, subscribe to a newsletter, which will be a checkbox, and finally a message area which will be a text area. So this is what you have to do. So give it your best shot. If you can do it, that's completely okay. Then come back and watch the solution. And now let me give you my solution. So what do we have to do? I'm gonna go ahead and go to my src folder and create another folder with the name of container, not container but the components. There we go. And inside there we have to create the controlled form.tsx, and we are going to be creating the uncontrolled one in a few seconds. So now let me just use my RAFCE, go to my app component and register there right here. So I'll just register there with the name of controlled form and close there. Now let me just run my npm run dev. So I'll use like npm run dev. So this is exactly something that we want. And now let's just create our form. So what I'm going to do is that first of all I'm going to be defining a state for my form. So I'll just use like form data and then set form data is going to be equals to the use state and the initial value. I'm going to be providing this object which will have the following properties, like the first name which will be set to empty string and the last name which will be set to empty string. We're going to be also passing an email, and finally the subscribe which will be set to false, and finally the message, and let's just provide empty string inside there. Now let me just close there, and now we have to go ahead and go to my UI and change that to the form. Okay, so whenever we submit this form, so we are going to be passing this function which we are going to be creating in a few seconds. So let's just type like on submit, and let's just pass our handle submit function which we are going to be creating in a few seconds. Now inside there we have to first of all provide the input field which will have the type of text, but we are going to be also providing the name, and the name will be set to first name, and we are going to be also providing the value. So the initial value will be coming from the form data.first name, and whenever we type something inside this form, so then we are going to be firing this function which is a handle change function, and also the placeholder will be set to first name. Let's just save our file. Now we have to create another form field which will be for the last name. I'm going to create my input field, and now here let's just pass one name, and which will be set to a last name, and here we also have to provide the value, and the value will be coming from the form data.last name, and I'm going to also provide the on change event handler, and let's just pass our handle change inside there, and the placeholder will say like last name. Save our file, and now underneath there we have to create another input field with the type of email. So I'm going to just go ahead and type the input field with the type of email, and I'm going to also paste the name, and the name will be set to email. We also have to provide the value, and the value will be set to form data.email, and we also have to provide the on change event handler and paste the on change right there. I'm going to also paste the placeholder which will be set to email. Save my file. Then we have to create a label. So let's just paste our label inside there which will not take any HTML input field, but we are going to be also providing our input, and here the type will be set to a checkbox, because now we are going to be creating our checkbox for our subscribe, and paste the name, and the name will be set to subscribe, and we also have to provide the check flag, and for this check flag we have to paste our form data.subscribe, and we are going to be also providing the on change event handler which will be set to the handle change like so. So let's just save our file, and here for this input field we are going to be also passing like the subscribe to newsletter, and now underneath there we have to create our text area. So I'll use like text area and paste the name, and the name will be set to a message, and the ID will be, I'm not going to be providing any IDs today, so I'll just paste the value, and the value will be coming from the form data.message, and we also have to provide the on change, like whenever somebody types something inside this input field, so we are going to be firing this function, and the placeholder will say like message like so. And now inside this text area, or not inside but now underneath here, we are going to be creating our button, and which will just say submit. Submit, and also provide my type, and the type will be set to submit. Now let me just save my file, and now let me go ahead and go to the top, and let's just create our handle submit function, and then we're going to be creating that other function. So I'll just create my handle submit which will take the event, and we're going to be also just annotating there as a anything, and let's just use the event.prevent default and execute there. Now we can also use the console.log of form data, and now let me just save my file. Now finally we have to just create our handle change function. Now let's just create that right here. So I'll just give it the name of like handle change, and let's just use the event, and I'm going to also annotate there as any inside there. Let's just destructure a few things like event.target, and here we are going to be destructuring the name, the value, and also the type and the check, and it's going to be equals to this event.target. And now finally we have to use the set form data and provide our previous data, and here inside there let's just our arrow function. First of all we have to make the clone of our existing previous data if we have there, but if you don't, so then we're going to be just creating this key and value, but I don't know why we're getting this error. Oh, that's because we have to provide the arrow right here. There we go. So now let me just paste a key as a name, and for the value we are going to be checking if the type is equal to checkbox. So in that situation we are going to be changing that to check, but if that's not the case, so we are going to be changing that to value. So let's just provide our comma and save my file, and that's everything that we have to do right now. So this is how our form looks like. I know it is looking super awful, but yeah, this is how we are going to be providing our first name, last name, email, and then the newsletter and message. So now let me go ahead and go to my console, and now let's just refresh there. First of all I'm going to provide my name which will be Hussein, and then web dev, web dev, and I'm going to also provide like test@gmail.com. And for the newsletter, I want to subscribe to there because Hussein is an amazing person and cool course. I guess that's going to be fine. So finally, let me just click on the submit button. Now it's going to give us this entire data right here. So this is how we are going to be building our form by using the control component. But now let's create that exact same form by using the uncontrolled component. So I'll just give it the name of like uncontrolled form.tsx would be fine. And now I'll just use my RAFC inside there. I'm going to copy the name of there, go to my app and comment this line out and render my component like so. But we have to render there, so that we also have to import it like so. And yeah, now we are getting our uncontrolled component. Let's just go there, and the first thing that we have to do is that we have to define our stats by using the useRef, because this is an uncontrolled component. So we would need the first name, last name and email. So I'll just go ahead and write like first name ref, and it's going to be equals to the useRef, not the reducer but the ref. And I'm going to also just provide the initial value of null today, but I'm going to also annotate there as HTML input element, because we know that we are going to be using there for the HTML input. So I'm going to also write like last name and then ref. I'll just give it that name, so last name ref, and it's going to be equals to that same useRef, not the effect but that ref. God damn it, I can't even type today. And the initial value will be set to no. And here I'm going to also paste the HTML input element. And that's it. Now we also have to create one for the email ref for the email reference, and use my email ref and provide my null value inside there. And now we are going to be using our HTML input element. Yeah, I guess that's going to be fine, and close them. Let's just create two more. So now we are going to be creating yet another one for the subscribe ref, and it's going to be equals to that same useRef. And now let's just use that HTML element, or HTML input element rather, and the initial value will be set to null. And finally we have to create one more for the message ref. It's going to be equals to the useRef, and the initial value I'm going to type like HTML text area in this case. Okay, so now let me just provide there, and the initial value will be set to null. Now let me go ahead and go to my UI. So let's just remove there, and I'm going to change that to the form. Come on, what the hell did I just do? As I said, today I can't even type. So let's just use our submit, and here let me just pass my handle submit right here. And inside this form we are going to be creating our input field with a type of text would be fine, and we're going to be also providing the reference, which will be set to the first name ref. And now we also have to provide the placeholder, which will select the first name. I'm going to save this file right now, but I'm going to also have to duplicate there a few times. So I guess that's going to be fine. But we also have to provide another value, which will be set to a last name reference. And we also have to change the label to the last name. There we go. Now we also have to change the text field to the email, because we're going to be providing our email, and also change that to the email ref, and change that to, and now let's just change the final one, and not even the final one, but let's just remove that and change that to the label. And I'm going to also remove this HTML4 from there and create my input field right here. And I guess that the type will be set to checkbox. And here we also have to provide the ref for the reference, and provide my subscribe ref. There we go. And now underneath there we are going to be saying like subscribe to news, come on, newsletter, and that's going to be it. And now underneath there we have to create our text area, and for this text area I'm going to just paste the mess, or we're not going to be doing it like this way, but let's just remove both of them. I'm going to paste my reference right here, ref like so, and provide my message ref, and I'm going to also paste the placeholder, which will be set to a message. And now finally let's just create our button, which will say submit, and provide my type, which will be set to submit. That's it for the UI. But now we have to create this handle submit function. Here I'm going to just define like const handle submit. It's going to take the event, so I'm going to also annotate that as a react.form event, because we're going to be using there for the form, and we specifically want to use there for the HTML form element, and close that. And now inside there, what do we have to do? We have to prevent the default behavior like so. And now we have to define our form data. So I'll use like const form data. It's going to be equals to this object. And first of all, let's just get the first name, not the reference, but just a first name, which will be coming from the first name reference dot current value. That's going to be totally optional. and get the value out of there. But if you don't get there, then you want to just provide the initial value of empty string to there. Now let me just do the same thing for the last name. So let's just provide our last name reference dot current value, and then we have to get the value from there. But if you don't have the value, so then we want to set that to empty string. Then we have to create the same thing for the email, and then the email reference dot current value, and then we have to get the value out of there. And if we don't have the value, so in that situation we are going to be only providing the empty string. And if that's not the case, then we are going to be also creating one for the subscribe. And you should definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this video right now. So subscribe reference dot current value, if you have there, then you want to get the checked from there. So checked. But if you don't have there, then you want to set that to the false. Come on, let's just change that to the false, and that's going to be it. Finally, let's just create one more for the message, which will be coming from the message reference, and then the current value, then the dot value. But if you don't have there, then you want to set that to empty string. Now let me just log that to the console so that we can see that. So I'll just use like form data, and now it will freak out. So let me just also create a what do we call it? I'm gonna go to the top, and here let's just also define that interface. So I'll just give it the name of like form data. You don't have to do that if you don't want to do that, but I want to do this. So I'll give it the name of like first name, and that's going to be set to a string. I'm going to also create a last name, will be now set to string. Then we have the email, which will be set to a string, and then we also have the subscribe, which will be set to a boolean, and then finally we have the message, which will be set to a string. Okay, so now let me go ahead and copy this form data from there, and I'm going to annotate my form with this newly created interface. So let's just save our file. And this is how my form looks like. So if I just type something, but I'm gonna have to go ahead and go to my console, and I'll just pass like someone cool, and then someone cool at gmail.com, and I also want to subscribe to his or her newsletter, and cool course Hussein or something like that. And now let me just click on this submit button, and now it's going to give us all of that data right here. So this is how we are going to be defining our component by using the control component and also the uncontrolled component. Okay, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, which is called the HOC, or the higher order component. So what are these, and why should anyone care about them? So the higher order component, or HOC design pattern, is used to reuse component logic, and it is a function that takes a component as an argument and return a new component that enhances the original one. This pattern allows us to share functionalities across multiple components without repeating our code. So that was just a quick definition of what HOC is, and now let me give you a quick note about the HOC. So an HOC, or higher order component, does not modify the original component directly, but instead wraps it in a new component, thereby adding additional behavior or modifying its props. So yeah, that was just a quick note. And now let me give you a quick example of how our regular component looks like and how our higher order component looks like. So this is how our regular component looks like. First of all, we are going to be creating some sort of a function, and the first letter will be uppercase because this is a component, not just a function. And inside this component, we are going to be returning some sort of a JSX, and this is what we call our regular component. Yes, of course, we can write our state and all of our logic, but basically this is how we are going to be creating our regular component. And now let me show you how our HOC component will look like. So I'm going to give you the most basic example of HOC, or higher order component. So here you can see this is how the code will look like. First of all, we are going to be creating a function, and now I know a lot of you will notice like the first letter is lowercase. And why is that? That's because this is not a component. This is a function which take a component as an argument or as a prop, whatever you want to call there, and then we can do whatever you want to do with that component. Okay, so here you can see I'm just passing a props to that nested component, and I'm just logging there, something which I'm going to be showing you in a lot of details. So without wasting any time, now let's get into the coding, and then you will get to know what I'm talking about. Now let's talk about the higher order component. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new folder with the name of utils, and I'm going to be creating my higher order component inside this utils folder. You are more than welcome to create the inside the components folder, but in my case, I'm going to be creating the inside the utils folder. And now let's just give it the name of like print props.tsx, and notice my file name does not start from the uppercase, it starts from the lowercase. And why is there? I'm gonna tell you why is there in a few seconds. So now let me just hit enter right here, and I'm gonna just use like const, and first of all we are going to be creating a function which will be a print props. A higher order component is just basically a function which take a component as a parameter, and then we can do whatever we want to do with that parameter or that specific component. So I'll just make it as a function like so, and this function will take the component as a parameter. So I'll give it the name of component, and you are more than welcome to give it any name that you prefer. You can give it the name of like apples, banana, or anything that you prefer, but in my case I'm gonna give it the name of component. And here I'm going to annotate the as any, because in this case we're now providing a component inside there. This is how we are going to be creating our function. Like first of all we have to create our function, and this function will only take a component as a parameter. And now I'm going to just return my component. So I'll use like props, and here I'm going to just annotate the as any, and inside this component we can do whatever you want to do inside there. So I'm going to just log to the console my props, because the name of my component is print props, which means like we are going to be only printing or logging these props to the console. And now let me just return my component, which we are now taking as a parameter. And now here I'll just use like dot dot dot, come on, dot 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 props, and now let's just close there. And now this is how we are going to be creating our first higher order component. Now let me just export that so that we can use that in other file. I'm gonna go to my app component, and now let's just use that right here. The first thing that I want to do is that I want to import my print props, and now we have to create an instance of there. So I'll just use like print props, and here inside there, as we all know, that it's going to take a component as a parameter, so which means like we have to specify some sort of a component to there. So I can just create my component like so, but in my case we already have this to-do list component. If you don't have that, you don't even have to worry about that. You can just write your RAFC inside there, but you have to have some sort of a component which you will need to pass inside this print props. So I'll just go ahead and just write like to-do list and import them. And now the next thing that I want to do is that I want to store them in some sort of a variable. So I'll use like to-do list wrap, or wrapper would be fine. And now I'm gonna call their to-do list wrapper as a component. So I'll use like to-do list wrapper, and I'm gonna just provide a few props to this. So I'll just use like 1, and it's gonna be set to 1. I'm gonna just say like 2, and it's gonna be set to I don't know, hello. And I'm gonna also write a 3, and it's gonna be set to some sort of an object, like name will be set to Hussein. And now we are passing these props to this component, and now let's just see whether it will give us or not. Here you can see we are now getting our to-do list. I'm gonna open there inside my console, and now let's just refresh there, and here you can see we are now getting our 1, 2 prop and also our 3 prop right here. And why is that? That's because we are now printing those props by using our higher order component. And that was our first higher order component. Let's create another higher order component. So I'll just create a new file with the name of with loading.tsx, and it's gonna allow us to provide a loader. Okay, so first of all let's just create our with loading, and it's gonna be taking a wrapped component. Come on, wrapped component, and I'm going to annotate that as a react.component type, and here we have to specify our generic. I'm going to also specify a generic right here for the beginning. So I'll just write like the generic, and we're going to be extending there extends from the object. So I'll just use like object and close there. Now let me just create the body of this function like so. So now let's just save our file, and from this function we are going to be returning our component. So I'll just use like function, and here we have to specify the name of with loading, and for the parameter I'm going to specify like, let's just remove that. I'm going to provide like is loading, and then dot 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 all of the props. I'm going to also define an interface for that. So let's just go to the top and define an interface for that. So I'll give it the name of like with loading props. It's going to take the flag of is loading, which will be set to boolean, and it's going to also take the key, and which will be set to a string, and we're going to be returning any from there. Okay, so I'm going to copy a name of that and place it right here for this component. And now inside this function we have to first of all check. So if it is loading, so in that situation we're going to be only returning h1, which will say loading dot dot dot. And now underneath them, if that's not the case, we are going to be just rendering our wrapped component. It's going to take all of their props. So let's just provide our props. Come on, props as a p generic. And now let me just close there. Let me go back, and this is how it looks like right here. And I'm going to also export this so that we can use it in other files. So I'll use like export, and now we would be able to use that in other file. But before we use that, I'm going to remove this to-do list component from there, and I'm going to define my component.tsx, and I'll use my RAFC inside there. and that's going to be it. Let's just go ahead and go to our component and remove that. I'm going to also remove both of them and this one as well. And the first thing that I want to do is that I want to get my width loading and also my component. So I'll use like my component like so. And now we have to use our width loading and specify my component inside there. And I'm going to store that in the variable with the name of my component width loading, and it's going to be equals to this function. I'm going to also specify a state, so I'll use like const is loading and then set is loading. It's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to true. And also for the data, we are going to be using like set data. It's going to be equals to this use state, and the initial value will be set to empty string. I'm going to also use the use effect, so I'll use like the use effect, and we are going to be doing a side effect, so I'll just provide like empty dependency array. And here I'm going to be using like set timeout, and that's not that much important, but we are going to be getting some sort of a loader, so that's why I'm providing this set timeout. So our set data will be set to data or FETCHED, there we go. And also our set loading will be set to totally false. And for the duration, we are going to be setting that to 2 seconds. And now I'm going to go to the top and copy the name of my component and call that component right here. So I'll just use like my component with loading, and it's going to take the is loading prop, and we have to set that to is loading. And also for the data, we're going to be setting that to data and close there. Now I'm going to also go ahead and go to my component, and here we're going to be only destructuring the data. And now let me just render that destructured data. So I'll use like data and close there, save my file. And I'm going to also wrap there as any, so that it will not give us any errors. And now if I just refresh there, and here you can see, first of all, it's going to give us a loading for 2 seconds, and then it's going to give us the data fetch. So let me just try that once again. So for 2 seconds, we are going to be getting that loader, and then it's going to give us that data fetch. So yeah, that was another higher order component. Now let's fetch some data by using our higher order component. So I'll give it the name of like with2.tsx, and here we are going to be fetching some sort of a data. First of all, we're going to be creating our function with the name of with to do, and let's just zoom in a bit, and it's going to take a component as a parameter. So I'll use like component, and that's going to be any. I'm going to also provide the to do ID to there, and that's going to be set to string. And inside there, we're going to be defining our component. So I'll just return like the props, and props can be anything. So I'll just write like any, and inside there, first of all, we have to create our state. So I'll use like const to do and then set to do. It's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to null. I'm going to go back, and now underneath there we have to do our side effect, which means like we have to fetch our data by using the use effect. And here inside there, I'm going to specify first of all my empty dependency array, and inside this use effect, we're going to be using our IFI or immediately invoke function expression. So here we have to just provide our IFI, and now we are going to be getting our response from our await our axios.get method. Now we are going to be providing our URL. So I'll just use like https and json placeholder.type icow.com/, and we are going to be getting our data from the to-dos. And here we have to render our to-do ID, which we are now getting. Let me just save this file, which we are now getting from as a parameter. So now let's just place that to-do ID right here. And now finally we have to just provide our set to do and the response dot to do, or data to be precise. So now let's just save our file, and this is how we are going to be fetching our data. And finally, underneath this use effect, we are going to be returning our component. And for this component, let's just close them. We are going to be providing first of all of the props, and then we are going to be providing our to do, and that's going to be coming from their to do state, which we are now putting right here. Finally, let's just export this so we can use them in other files. Now let me go ahead and go to my app component and remove every single thing from there and replace it with this app component. And the first thing that I want to do is that I want to get my with load, not loading, but with to do rather. And the next thing that we have to do is that we have to create an instance of there. So with to do, it's going to take a component. So we are going to be passing our to do list component. Oh, I forgot. I already did this. So I'll just write like to do list.tsx file. I'm going to use my RFC inside there. And now let's just grab our to do list component. And we are going to be also providing the to do ID. So in this case, I only want to fetch my data from the second ID, and now we have to store them in some sort of a variable. So I'll use like to do list wrapper, and it's going to be equals to this to do list wrapper. So I'm going to copy a name of there, and I'm going to remove this app from there and call my component like so. And I'm going to also close this. So now if I save my file, And now I'm going to also go ahead and go to my to-do list and place these coding right here once again. So we have that same to-do list. First of all, we have our to-do interface. Then we have yet another interface. Now we are getting our to-do. Then we are only destructuring the ID and the title. We are checking if we have the to-do. So in that situation, we are going to be showing that to-do ID and also the title. But if that's not the case, so we are going to be providing a loader. So that's totally done. And here you can see we are now getting our data. So I can also change that to, like, I don't know, maybe 24. And now if I just refresh, then it's going to give us 24 and also different data. So this is how we are going to be using the higher order components to fetch our data. So this challenge which you are now about to perform will be a bit difficult, but I want you to still give it your best shot. If you can do it, that's completely okay. Then come back and watch the solution. But I want you to at least give it your best shot. So what do you have to do? So you have to create the higher order component to access control and dynamic prop injection. So you'll need to implement the higher order component that does the following things. So first of all, the access control and then the dynamic prop injection. So what is the access control? So the higher order component should accept a roles prop, which is an array of allowed roles, and the higher order component should check if the user has the required roles, and if not, it should display the fallback component like not authorized message or redirect that to the other page. We are not going to be taking care of the redirect to other pages because now in this case we are not using any third-party libraries like the React Router DOM and something like that. So you can just display a component which will select not authorized message. Next, it should also take the dynamic prop injections. So the higher order component should also be able to inject the dynamic props into the wrap component based on a certain condition. So like for example, based on the user role, the higher order component should inject additional prop into a wrap component like the special content or feature based on their specific roles. So what are the requirements? So you need to define the types for the components. Then the higher order component should be flexible to handle any type of the component with the ability to inject custom props, handle default props and dynamic props injection based on the roles, and implement the roles prop properly, ensuring that the injected component only render for the user with the correct role. So give it your best shot, and once again I have to emphasize that this is going to be a bit advanced challenge. So if you can do it, that's completely okay. I totally understand. And now let's get into it. So what do we have to do? First of all, we have to create a few folders. Then we are going to be filling those folders. So I'm going to just define first of all the types folder in which we are going to be defining our types. Then we have to define our components folder. So I'll just give it the name of like components. And finally, we have to define our utils in which we are going to be defining or creating our higher order components. So that's done. The first thing that we have to do is that we have to take care of the types. I'm going to create a file with the name of axes, ACCESS, and then types.ts. So you don't have to give it this name, but I want to give it this name. And basically it should be access control.types.ts. Okay, so now inside there, I'm going to be defining a few types. So I'll just define first of all the interface for the access control props, and inside there it's going to take the roles, and we're going to be annotating there by a string of array, and then it's going to also take the fallback component. So I'll just pass like fallback component, and here let's just pass for react.component types, component types. There we go. And we should get the React from the React.js so that it will not give us any errors. So let's just get the React from the React.js, and that's totally done. Now underneath there, we also have to provide our injected props. So injected, injected, injected props, and that's going to be totally optional. Here let's just pass our key to that, and key will be set to totally string, and it should accept anything. So that's totally done. We also have to export this so that we can use that in other file. So now that's totally done. The next thing that we have to do is that we have to create an interface for the injected props. So I'll just define my interface, and by the way, we also have to export that so that we can use that in other file. And I'm going to give it the name of like injected props, and inside there let's just provide our username, totally optional, and make that as a string. User permissions, user permission, and we also have to annotate it as a string of array. And finally we have to create the final interface for what? For the wrapped component props. Okay, and we should extend the functionality from the injected props, and now inside there we have to provide the additional one which will be set to a message and provide my string inside there. So this is what we have to do right now. Now we are also exporting there so that we can use that in other files. So that's totally done. Now let me just close there. Now we have to define our higher order component. So to do that, we are going to be creating a new file with the name of with, because we are now creating our higher order function or components. And I'm going to give it the name of like access ACCESS control.tsx. Yeah, I guess that's going to be fine. Let's just go back. And the first thing that we have to do is that we have to define the role. By that specific role, we're going to be providing our functionality like either authorized or not authorized. So I'll just give it the name of like current user role, and it's going to be set to the admin. Initially, we want to check the functionality of the admin, and now we are going to be creating our higher order component. So I'll use like export because we're going to be using the in other files. And now we have to create like with access control. Yeah, I guess that's going to be fine. And we also have to provide our generic, which we are going to be extending, which will extend from the object. Okay, so let's just pass our object inside there and close there. And inside there, what do we have to do? We have to pass our perimeters, but we're going to be doing that in a few seconds. But now let me just create my arrow function right here. So first of all, we are going to be providing our wrapped component. So let's just write like wrapped component. And I'm going to be passing that from the component type and provide my generic right here and the injected prompt, which we are going to be getting from our types file. So injected prompts, there we go. So let's just import that and use that right here. And we also have to import the component type from the React.js, and this is what we have to do right now. Now let me go ahead and go to my higher order component and start working on that. So we are going to be returning, come on, let's just return the props. First of all, prop will take the generic of p and also the access control, which we just defined inside that other file. Now let me just pass my arrow function right here. So now inside there, we're going to be providing our props right here. So we are going to be destructuring a lot of things from our props. So let's just destructure that things. I'm gonna go ahead and destructure the roles. Come on, that's going to be the first thing. And we also have to get the fallback component, and let's just annotate it to the fallback, which we are going to be creating in a few seconds. So this should be in lowercase b. And I'm going to also provide my injected props, and the initial value I'm going to specify this object to there. And finally, we have to just get the rest of the props. So I'll just use like rest props and go back semi file. And this is how everything looks like right here. Now we have to check whether the user is available or not, or has the access or not. So in that situation, we are going to be getting that roles, and we have to use the JavaScript includes method on there, and then we have to pass our current role, which is now initially set to this admin right here. So once we do that, I'm going to also store the inside the variable. So I'll just give it the name of like has access, and that's going to be it. So let's just save our file. And now if the user does not have access, so has access is not the case. So in that situation, we are going to be returning our fallback component, which we are going to be creating in a few seconds. So let's just do that. Also, now we have to merge our props. So in this situation, we are going to be using like merge props, and let's just pass our object. First of all, we have to get the rest of the props, and we also have to get the injected props. So then it's going to allow us to merge all of them. Now underneath that, we have to just return our wrapped component, and also let's just close it like this. I'm going to be passing first of all, let me just even make the clone of this. So I'm going to pass my merge props and as a generic p and our own injected props. So let's just pass the semi file. So this is how we are going to be defining our what do we call it, our higher order component. And now we have to use that inside our app. So now let me just go ahead and go to my app. And the first thing that we have to do is that we have to even import that so that we can use that. So I'll just go ahead and import the with access control. And now I'm going to go ahead and also define two other components inside this components folder. One will be for the authorized user and another one will be for not authorized user. So I'll just create a file with the name of, first of all, not authorized.tsx. And we're not going to be doing anything special inside there, but I'll just use my RAFCE. And here we just have to write like you are not authorized, AUTHORAZED, to view this content. And now let me just save my file, go back, and that's totally done. Now we also have to go ahead and just create another component so that we can see something on the screen. So I'll just create like my component .tsx, I guess that's going to be fine. And I'll use my RAFC inside there. And here it's going to take a few props, so I'm going to have to destructure them. I'm going to just restructure the message, the user name, and also the user permission, and that's going to be it. But we also have to annotate that with our wrap component, which we already defined inside our types. So we are now talking about this wrap component props, and which we are already providing right here. So now inside there, let me just remove that from here and provide my h1 and render my message first of all. So I'll use like message, message. I'm gonna also provide my paragraph, which will say like welcome, and then that specific username, and also the paragraph in it will say like your permission, and then here let's just pass for your permission. What the hell was that? Your permission. It should be optional, like if we get there, then we're going to be joining there with this comma. And now let me just save my file, and your permission, your user permission, there we go. And it is not defined because we are not even providing the inside our app component. So now let's just use that. I'm gonna go ahead and go to the top, and here let's just use like with access control, and here I'm gonna be passing my own component which we just defined. Okay, and now here let me just store the inside the variable with the name of like, I don't know, maybe my component with access control. I know the name is super long, but yeah, it is what it is. So now here inside my app, close them. I'm going to be calling that component, so I'll just call like my component with the access user control or access control. I know the spelling is super long, so I'm going to also close that or execute that like so. And here we have to first of all pass the roles, and the roles can be the admin, and also that's because we have to provide the curly braces, and now we have to specify our role. So I'll just give it the name of like admin and also the manager. Okay, and now outside from there, we are going to be also creating our fallback component or providing our fallback component, which will be set to like not authorized. And now let's just save our file. And also I'm going to provide some sort of a message. So let's just say like hello and then admin or something like that. And also the injected prompts as well. So here inside there, we are injecting these prompts like username. It's going to take like my own name, Hussein WebDev. And I'm going to also pass the user permission. What was the user permission? So let's just copy there, place them right here, and I'll just say like I don't know, view passwords, and also view the settings or something like that. Now let me just save my file, and why in the world we are providing a comma there? Let's just save our file, and now let me just refresh there. So here you can see it's gonna give us like hello admin and also welcome my name. And now finally we have the permission to see the passwords and also the settings. We can also change that to like, I don't know, maybe dashboard or something like this. So I'll just write like dashboard, save this file, so we can also see the dashboard and also the settings. So that's totally done. But you know what, instead of just providing this admin and user, I mean like admin and manager, I'm gonna duplicate that and comment this line out and change that to the user, and also change this one to the guest or something like that if I save my file. And now it's going to give us like you are not authorized to view this content, which is our fallback component, which you can see right here, which we are also providing as a fallback component to our higher order component. So yeah, that was it about the higher order component challenge, and let's just get into the next one. Now let's talk about the custom hooks. So custom hooks are a powerful feature that allows us to encapsulate and reuse logic across component. They help to extract component logic into reusable functions, making our code cleaner, more modular, and easier to maintain. So here is a code without using a custom hook. So here inside there, first of all, we are just creating some sort of a state for storing our data. Then we are using a use effect to fetch our data. And finally, we are now rendering our data. But now imagine for a second that you have a lot of component and you have to fetch your data in all of that component. So first of all, you're going to be creating your state, then you're going to be using that use effect and all of that kind of logic. And then finally, you're going to be rendering your data. So to encapsulate all of that logic into a separate function, we are going to be using a custom hook for that. And here you can see this is how we are going to be using that by just passing our URL, and then finally we have to render our content. And that's not only it, we are going to be learning a lot of stuff. Anytime you are working with the hooks, first of all, you have to provide the use, and then you can give it any name that you prefer. You can give it the name of like use hook name, use your name, or anything that you prefer. But first of all, you have to specify the use keyword in the beginning of the custom hook name. Welcome to one of my favorite topic in this entire course, which is called the custom hook. I already discussed this topic in the first part of this course, But if you didn't watch that section, well, you don't have to worry about it. I got you, baby. I got you. We already discussed what in the world is a custom hook is, but now we are going to be building a lot of stuff by using this custom hook. So first of all, let me just go ahead and define my components folder, and inside there we are going to be starting from without custom hook.tsx. Okay, so I'll just use my RAFC inside there, go to my app and register there right in here. So without the custom hook. And yep, we are now getting there, which means like everything is working the way we expect him to work. First of all, we are going to be fetching our data without using the custom hook. And then we are going to be refactoring that code to use the custom hook. So what I'm going to do is that still, I'm going to be using that JSON placeholder.type I code, and I'm going to just fast forward. I'm not going to be explaining all of the data fetching logic and something like that. So I'll just write like data and then set data, and it's going to be equals to the use stat, and the initial value will be null. And also I'm going to define an interface for this, so I'll use like interface of to do, and inside there let's just provide our ID of number, and the title will be set to a string. So my use stat will either take the to do as an array or null value like this. Now let me just save my file and go back, and here let's just provide our use effect, and inside there I'm going to provide my empty array. And now here let's just provide our fetch method, and here we are going to be using our https JSON placeholder, come on, JSON placeholder dot type icode.com/todos. And now let's just use our then method, and let's just provide our response. If we have the response, so we want to convert that to JSON, and I'm going to also use the then method once again and provide my data inside there. And I'm gonna also annotate there, but first of all let's just use our set data and provide our data inside there. So I'll just be using my to do and just annotate there with this to do. Now let me just remove that, and here I'm going to be checking if we have the data. So in that situation, then we want to iterate over through that data. So I'll just use like the item here, and inside there I'm going to be returning a paragraph. So let's just return a paragraph, and I'm going to just return like item.title, and I'm going to also specify the key which will be set to item.id. Now let me just save my file. Check this out. So I guess I made some sort of a mistake. And yes, I guess I did. Failed to fetch the data, and I made a typo inside there, so I just fixed that. And yeah, we are now getting all of our data. So now let's talk about how we are going to be extracting all of the data fetching logic into our custom hook, and then we are going to be only rendering the UI. Okay, so to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and first of all define another folder with the name of hooks. You don't have to do that, but I want to do that. And I'm gonna define my use fetch.tsx. Now inside there, let's just define our custom hook. And you guys already know that if you are creating our custom hook, so we have to specify the use for the first name. Then we can give it any name that we prefer. So in my case, I'm gonna only specify like use fetch. And now we have to set that to the type generic. And let's just close the likes, not text but just a type. There we go. And it's going to also take the URL, and the URL will be set to string, and we are going to be returning the type or the null value out of there. Okay, so now in this situation we are going to be just defining our data and then set data as a state, and it's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be null. And I'm going to also provide my generic type or null value to there, and I'm gonna close there like so. I'm gonna go back so you guys can see everything a bit better. And now let me use my use effect, because we are going to be fetching our data by using the use effect. And I'm gonna also provide my URL as a parameter, I mean like dependency array to be precise. Now inside there I'll just use like fetch data, and it's gonna be equals to that asynchronous function once again. And now let's just use our try and catch block. So if we have some sort of an error, so in that situation we are going to be logging that error to the console. So I'll use like console.error, and here I'll just write like fetch error or fetching error or something like that. And now I'm going to specify my error inside there, and I'm going to be also using my set data, and the initial value will be set to null. And for the try block, we are going to be first of all getting the response. So I'll use like response. It's going to be set to await and then fetch, and here we have to specify that URL which we are now taking as a parameter for this use fetch, and I'm going to specify that right here. And based on that specific URL, we're going to be fetching our data. So let's just close that, and I'm going to also check if we don't have any response.ok. So I'll write like response.ok. So if you don't have that, so in that situation we are going to be only throwing this new error which will say like network was not okay. And now underneath there, let's just get our result. It's going to be set to await and then response.json, and we are going to be getting there as a type generic. Okay, and also we have to use our set data and provide my result inside there. So this is how we are going to be getting our data. I'm going to copy a name of there, and now let's just execute this function right here. So fetch our data, and this is how we are going to be fetching our data. From this hook we are going to be only returning our data out of there. So I'll just use like return in data. Now let me just save my file, and finally we have to export there so we can use there in other files. So I'll use like export default and then use fetch. I'm going to save my file right now, and I'm going to define another component with the name of with custom hook.tsx. Okay, so now in this case I'm going to go to the without one. I'm going to copy every single thing from there and place it right here inside the with custom hook.tsx file, and I'm going to just remove basically all of them. And here we have to just use or use fetch function, fetch hook to be precise, which we just created. And now here for the URL we are going to be providing that same URL, so I'll just paste it right here, which is that json placeholder.type icode.com/todos. and now from there we are going to be only destructuring our data, so I'll use like data, and now let's just close there like so. So this is how we are going to be fetching our data by using this custom hook, but I'm going to also provide this to do of array and close there, so that errors are now successfully gone. I'm going to also remove that line of code, and still once again we are getting all of that data right here, and we can do whatever we want to do with that data. So instead of providing like all of that logic for every single component, we don't have to do that no more. We can use our use fetch function, and we just have to specify our URL, and it's going to fetch our data. So here you can see this is how we are going to be doing there. First of all, we are just creating some sort of a state to store our data. Then we are using a use effect for side effect, and now here you can see we are just creating an asynchronous function, try and catch block, and for the try block we are using the fetch, but you can also use the XUS library. You can totally do that if you wanted to, but I am only using the fetch. And now we are specifying that URL which we are now providing and which we are using right here. So we are now providing that URL, and based on that URL it's going to give us that JSON response. And then finally we are just pushing that to our states, so that our state will hold all of our data. And finally we are just returning our data, and this is how we are using that inside our component like so. And finally we have to render that to our UI, and that's done. I already stopped recording this video, but then I realized that I forgot to include something called the flags. So now let me just add that. First of all, we are going to be adding the loading, so I'll just write god damn it loading, and then set loading, and it's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to true in this case. And I'm going to also annotate that as a boolean value just like that. I'm going to also provide the error, and then set error. It's going to be equals to the use state value, and the initial value will be set to null. And I'm going to also annotate that as any like so. I'm going to write like set loading, and I'm going to set that to true. And also for the catch block we are going to be setting the error to error, and also I'm going to add the finally. So when it is finally, in this situation we are going to be setting the loading to totally false. And now we are going to be also destructuring the loading, so I'll just write like loading, and also the error as well. Now let me go ahead and go to my component, which is a with custom hook, and now let me just destructure there. I'll use like loading and also the error. And here what I want to do is that I want to write like, first of all, if loading, in this situation we are going to be returning a paragraph of loading. So I'll just write like loading ... and also underneath there we're going to be writing like if we got some sort of an error. So in this situation we're going to be returning the error fetching to do's. And here let me just render that error.message right here. So now if I just refresh there, you will not able to see that loading because we already rendered that data, but here you get the idea. So now let's create a custom hook for our form and form validation. But first of all, we are going to be creating our form without using the custom hook. Then we are going to be refactoring that code to use the custom hook. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and define my components folder. So I'll just define there. Inside there we are going to be creating like my form.tsx or something like that. And now let's just start working on it. So I'll just save this file, go to my app and register there right here. So I'll use like my form and close there. The first thing that I want to do is that I want to create a controlled form. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a name. Come on, let's just write name and set name. It's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to empty string. I'm going to also provide the email. So I'll just write like if I can type it today. So set email and also use state, and the initial value will be empty string. And finally for the submitted, so I'll use like submitted and then set submitted like so, and it's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to false in this case. Now let me go ahead and go to my form and start working on that. But first of all, we are going to be checking if we have the submitted form. In this situation, we are going to be showing one UI. But if that's not the case, then we are going to be showing another UI. So you know what, let's just write a paragraph, or h2 to be precise, and it's going to say like, thank you for submitting your information, like so. But if that's not the case, we are going to be creating our form like this. I'm not going to be providing any action today, but now inside this form, we are going to be creating our div. And inside this div, let me just provide a label. We're not going to be providing any HTML4 today, and this label will say like name. And I'm going to also provide my input field, and here for this input field, the type will be set to text, and the value will be coming from that name state. And when somebody try to type something inside this, we are going to be using like set name and provide my event.target.value inside there, and it should be required. So now let me just save my file, and that's going to be it for this div. So now let me just collapse them, and now let's just create another div for the email. So I'll just create a div, and inside this div, let's just provide one label, not HTML4. Inside this label, I'll just say like email, and also my input field with the type of email. And here we are going to be passing a value, and the value will be set to email. And when somebody try to type something inside there, then we are going to be using this set email function, provide my event.target.value, and also required like so. Now underneath this div, let me just hide there. Underneath this div, we are going to be creating our button, and I'll just say like submit, and here the type will be also set to totally submit. That's totally done. But now let me also take care of the submitting. So here on this form, I'm gonna attach my own submit event handler, and when somebody clicks on there or submit there, we're going to be firing this handle submit function. So I'm gonna copy a name of there, and now let's just create that right here. So I'll use the const handle submit. It's gonna take the event, and I'm gonna annotate there with the React. Come on, React.form event like so. And here we just have to pass our event.prevent default and close them. I'm gonna also use the set submitted value, and here we have to set to true. And I'm gonna also log to the console like submitted and I'll just say like name and also the email. Now let me just save my file, and that's totally done. Now let me check this out, but first of all, we also have to provide, what do we call it, our border. So I'll just attach my border there, and also here. So let's just add my class name. It's going to be set to a border. And yep, we are now getting this one. Let me just zoom in a bit. We are now getting a border for this one and also for that one. I'm not going to be worrying about the, what do we call it, the styling, because we don't have to worry about the styling right now. If you care about the styling, you can definitely go ahead and go to the first video of this course, which is I guess about 13 hours of long content. So I'll just write like something for the name. I'm going to specify my own name, and for the email, I'll just say like test@gmail.com. and now if I click on this submit, and here you can see what are we getting. We are now getting our submitted form, and also we are getting the email and also the name, which means like everything is working the way we expect them to work. And also we are now getting this thank you message. So that's cool and everything, but I want you to imagine that you have a lot of form inside your application. So how in the world you are going to be handling that? Well, to do that we can just create all of that logic inside that component, or we can be a bit better developers and we can create our custom hooks inside this folder. So I'll just go ahead and just create my use form.tsx, and not from form, use, come on, use form. There we go. And now let's just start working on there. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to create my use form. It's going to take the initial value. So I'll just write like initial value, or values rather. And here we have to specify the key, and the key will be set to string. And also we are going to be returning a string out of there. So now inside there, what do we have to do? And it should be inside. So now let me just cut there and place that right here. So now inside there, what do we have to do? First of all, we have to get the values and also the submitted data. So I'll just use like values and set values, and it's going to be equals to the use state and the initial value, which we are going to be grabbing from this form. So now let me just place that right here. So that's going to be my initial value. Let me just go back. I'm going to also provide the submitted flag. So I'll use like submitted and also set submitted like so, and it's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to false. Now let's just take care of the handle change, like when somebody try to type or change something inside the input field. So for that we are going to be firing this function, which is a handle change. And here we can do a lot of stuff, but first of all, let me just provide my event, and it's going to be coming from the React. First of all, let's just get that from the React, and then change event. and we are going to be also providing the HTML input element. And now let me just annotate there. And now inside there, we are going to be getting a few things from the event.target, and we are going to be getting first of all the name and also the value from this event.target. And now let me just set there to my values. So I'll just use like set values and provide my previous state, and here I'm gonna just paste like dot dot dot. First of all, we have to make a clone of our previous state, and then for the key we are going to be passing the name, and for the value we are going to be passing this actual value. Now that's totally done, but now we also have to take care of the submitting of the form. When somebody try to submit our form, so in that situation we are going to be firing this function, which is a handle submit, and it's going to be equals to the callback. And here for this callback we have to just specify our void. We are going to be returning our event, and that's going to be coming from the react.form event like so. Okay, so now inside there we are going to be first of all preventing the default behavior, and then we are going to be using set submitted value and set there to false. Okay, which we already created right here. So we have a submitted and set submitted. So now we are setting there to false, and then we are going to be passing this callback function, and we have to execute there. Now finally we have to just render all of their values, and also the handle change, and also the handle submit, and finally the submitted value as well. So that's totally done. Finally we have to just export this so we can use them in other files. So I'll use like export default, come on, default, and then use form and close there. So that's totally done. Now let me just close this file, and now we have to use the inside our component. So now let me just go ahead and go to my component, and I'm going to remove every single thing from there. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to grab my use form, and inside this use form we are going to be providing the initial value of name, which will be set to empty string, and also for the email, which will be also set to empty string. So now from there we're going to be destructuring a few things. So what do we have to destructure? Let me just destructure a few things like the values, the handle change, and also the handle submit, and the submitted out of there. So now let me just save my file, and when somebody try to submit there, so in that situation we're going to be using like on submit, and here I'll just call this function which will just say like, I don't know, const.log of submitted, and here we also have to specify all of that values inside there. Now let me just go ahead and go to my handle submit, like on submit, and here we have to specify our handle submit and on submit, which we just created right here. That's done. And for this value I'm gonna first of all provide my values.name. Come on, not values, but just a values.name. And for the set name, or you know what, we're not going to be providing any of that, so I'll just remove that and change that to a handle change like so. That's totally done. I'm going to go to the bottom once again and change that to the values.email. I'm going to also remove that and provide my handle change inside there, and I guess that's going to be done. So now let me just save my file, and I'm going to also remove that from there, and let me just try there once again by using or custom hook. So I'll just remove there and provide my name, which is Hussein. Oh my god, I can't even type something inside there. Okay, so it took me a lot of time, but finally I realized that I forgot to include the names. God damn it. So let's just provide the name, and the name will be set to name for the first one, and for the second one the name will be set to email. Now let me just save my file, and now I can type whatever I want to type right here. So I'll just write my name Hussein and test@gmail.com, and now if I click on there, and here you can see it's going to give us their thank you message, and also we are now getting our data right here, and that's all thanks to this use form hook, to be precise. Now we are going to be creating a custom hook for reading and writing data to the local storage, but first of all we are going to be creating our component without using the custom hook, and we are going to be refactoring that code to use the custom hook. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create my components folder, components, and inside there let's just create our theme toggle.tsx, and I'm going to be using my RAFC inside there. Let's just go ahead and go to our app and register that component right here, just like that. So toggle theme, was there a toggle theme? Oh, theme toggle, there we go. And now let me just close there. Check this out. So yeah, we are now getting there. So let's just refresh there, and now let's start working on there. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to create my state. So I'll use like theme and then set theme. It's going to be equals to the use state, and here we have to specify the initial value of light to there, and I'm going to also annotate that as a string, and that's going to be done. So now the next thing that I want to do is that I want to use my use effect for the side effect, and here for the dependency array we are not going to be providing nothing to there. So now let's just get the data from the local storage. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be using my windows.localstorage.getItem. So let's just write a get item, item, there we go. And now I'm going to just provide a theme to there. I'm going to also store that in some sort of a variable like store theme, and it's going to be equals to that data. Now the next thing that we have to do is that we have to check if we have the stored theme. In that situation, we are going to be using the set theme, and we have to pass our json.parse inside there, and here we are going to be passing our stored theme inside there, just like so. The next thing that we have to do is that we have to go to our UI, and now let's just first of all write our h1. Let me just write h1, and here I'm going to say like current theme and render my theme inside there. And I'm going to also create a button which will allows us to toggle our theme. Okay, so I'm going to also provide the on-click event handler when somebody try to type something inside. I mean, like when somebody try to click on this button. So we are going to be firing this toggle theme function. Now let's just create that right here. I'm going to go ahead and define my toggle theme, and inside there, first of all, let's just get our theme. So I'll use like a new theme, and it's going to be equals to this theme, and let's just write if that is equal to light. So in that situation, we are going to be changing that to dark, but if that's not the case, we are going to be setting there to light. So that's done. Now let me just push that to my theme state. So I'll use like new theme, and also let me just push that to the local storage. So I'm going to be using like windows.localstorage, and then the set item. Let's just use our set item inside there. We're going to be passing a theme to there, and then JSON, come on, JSON.parse, I mean like not parse but stringify, and here we have to pass our new theme to there. So that's also done. I'm going to also go ahead and just provide a bit of styling to there. So I'll just use like style, and for this style, I'm going to provide a bit of background color first of all. So I'll use like background, I mean like just background would be fine, and that's going to be set to if we have the theme equals to the light. Okay, so if that's the case, so in that situation, we are going to be setting there to totally white. But if that's not the case, we are going to be setting there to 333. That's done. I'm going to also provide the color. So for the text color, if the theme is equal to light, so in that situation, what do we have to do? We have to set that to totally black. But if that's not the case, we have to set that to totally white. I'm going to also provide a bit of padding to this. So padding will be set to 20 pixel all around. I'm going to provide a comma there and also there. And now let me just save my file. And that's totally done. Now let me go ahead and click on there. So here you can see it's going to give us the current theme, and now that is set to totally dark. And if I click on there once again, so it's going to make it as a light. So you know what, let me just also go ahead and go to my inspect element, and I'm going to also go to the application, and now let me just show you there. Here you can see inside this local storage, what do we have? Oh my god, if I can get that today. So what do we have? We have our theme, and which is now currently set to light. I'm going to delete all of that, and now as soon as I click on this toggle theme, here you can see our theme is now set to dark. And now if I just refresh my page, here you can see still we are getting this dark theme right here. But if I click on there once again, so it's going to change there to light. So this is how we are going to be setting and also getting the data from our local storage without using our custom hook. So now let me just refactor all of that code to use our custom hook so that we can use that again and again. And now let me just go ahead and create my hooks folder, and inside there I'm going to be defining our use local storage.tsx file, or you can also just set that to ts if you wanted to. So I'm going to set that to ts, and now let's just start working on there. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to create my use local storage storage, and it's going to tag that type generic, and I'm going to also provide a key, and the key will be set to string. And I'm going to also provide the initial value, and initial value will be set to that generic. So I'm going to have to provide a comma there, and now we are going to be just creating our function right here. So inside there, the first thing that we have to do is that we have to create our stored value. So I'll just go ahead and just create my stored. Now let's use a set stored value inside there, and it's going to be equals to our use state, and the initial value will be set to type generic. So now inside there we are going to be passing our callback function, and inside there let's just use our try and catch block. For the catch block we are going to be using console.error, and here we have to render our error. So error reading local storage key, and we also have to render our key inside there. Come on, just a key. And now let me just close there, and now outside from there we have to render our error. We can also do that inside, but yeah, you get the idea. I'm going to also return the initial value. Now for the try block, what do we have to do? We have to first of all get the item from our local storage. So I'm going to be using like window.localstorage and then get item. And what are we getting? We are now getting that key, which we are going to be passing or our use local storage. So now let me just store them in some sort of a variable. So I'll use like item and it's going to be equals to this window dot local storage and so on and so forth. And now let me just return item. If that is the case, if we have the item, so then we have to use json.parse and we have to specify our item inside there. But if that's not the case, so we have to set there to the initial value. That's also done. I'm gonna collapse there, and now the next thing that we have to do is that we have to set the value. So this is how we are going to be getting the value, but now we also have to set the value. So I'll just use like const set value, and it's gonna be equals to that value, and here we have to specify our generic or our value inside this. So I'll use like value. It's going to be also set to their generic, and here we're going to be returning a generic function from there. So now inside there, let's just use our try and catch block, and for the catch block we are going to be using console.error, and here we have to specify like error setting local, come on, local storage key. So let's just pass our key inside there, and that key will be set to this specific key. And I'm gonna also render my error inside there, just like so. We're going to be using like value to store, and here is going to be equals to value the instance of. So I'll use like instance of function if that is the case. So in that situation, we are going to be using like value and pass our stored value inside there. But if that's not the case, so we are going to be setting there to our initial value, just like this. Also, we have to get this store value, and we have to set that to our local to our state. So I'll use like set stored value, and let's just pass our value to store inside there. I'm gonna also provide the window dot local storage dot set item, and here inside there let's just pass our key and json dot parse json dot stringify rather, and we are going to be passing like value to store inside there. That's also done. I'm gonna collapse there. And now the next thing that we have to do is that we have to use our use effect once again. So I'll use like use effect. Now it's gonna allow us to change our data from our local storage. So I'm going to just go ahead and use my handle storage change, and it's going to be equals to this function, and inside there let's just get our item, and it's going to be equals to the windows.local storage that get item, and here we have to specify our key inside there. And if we have that item, like if we get that item, so we're going to be using like set stored value, and here we have to use our json.parse and pass our item inside there. But if that's not the case, we are going to be using like set stored value, come on, set store value, and we are going to be passing our initial value to there. That's done. Now underneath this function, what do we have to do? We have to attach our event listener on our storage. So I'll just use like window dot add event listener from our JavaScript, and now we are able to do that because we are now inside the use effect. So that's why we would be able to provide our effect or side effect to be precise. So I'll just get the storage, storage, and I'm going to pass that function which is a handle store change, which we just defined right here. So that's totally done. Now finally, I'm going to also do a bit of cleanup. So I'll just return like this cleanup function, and here we have to pass our window.remove event listener, and we have to provide our storage once again. And then we are going to be using like handle storage change, and then it's totally done. And now from this function, for the dependency array, we are going to be passing the key and also the initial value. So that's totally done. I'm going to hide there. Now we have to export all of that data which we just created. So I'll just use like return, and here we have to specify our stored value and set value as a constant. Okay, that's totally done. Finally, we have to export this so we can use it in other file. So I'm going to be using like export default and then use local storage. And now let me just save my file, and that's totally done. Let me expand that, also expand this one, and also expand that one. So that's totally done. So now let's just use the inside our file. Now let me go ahead and go to my file, and I'm going to basically remove every single thing from there. So let's just remove all of them, say bye-bye to all of them. And now I'm going to be using my use local storage, and here we have to specify first of all the theme for the key, and we also have to provide the initial value for that. So for the initial value, I'm going to specify light as the initial value. Now we are going to be destructuring the theme and also the set theme out of there. So I'll use like set theme, and it's going to be equals to this use local storage. Now let's just create our function which will allows us toggle our theme. So I'll use like toggle theme. And why the hell did I just remove the my bad. So now I'm going to be using my set theme, and here we have to specify first of all my previous value. And for this previous value, if that is set to the light, in that situation we are going to be setting that to dark. But if that's not the case, we are going to be setting that to light once again. I'm going to remove that. So now let me just try that once again. So let's just refresh there, click on the toggle, and I'm going to also go ahead and go to my use local storage and remove that from there. And now let me just click on there once again. So we are now getting a dark value. If I click on there once again, so we are now getting a light value right here. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so yeah, we also created a toggle theme or use local storage, whatever you want to call it. Time to create a custom hook for the model, but first of all, we're going to be creating our component without using the custom hook. Then we will refactor that code to use our custom hook. So let me just go ahead and create my components folder, and I'll just define my model.tsx inside there. And I'm going to be using my RAFC and go to my app and register there right in here. So I'll use my not app but my model component. So let's just use our model and close there. Now let me go ahead and go to this model, and first of all it's going to take a few props. So is open and then on close. So it's going to take these props. I'm going to go to the top and let's just create an interface for there. I'm going to pass my model, come on, model props like so, and I'm going to say like is open, it's going to be set to a boolean, and on close it's going to be set to this function, and I'm going to say like void. I'm going to also annotate my component, so model props, and now the next thing that we have to do is that we have to check if not is open. So in that situation we are going to be returning only null. That's done. Now let me go ahead and go to my model and provide a bit of styling today. So I'll just use like class name of totally fixed. The top will be set to 0, the left will also be set to 0, the right will be set to 0, bottom totally 0, flex and justify will be set to totally center, and items will also be set to totally center. And now let me just save my file. I'm going to also provide a styling, and for this styling I'll just say like background will be set to this RGBA, come on RGBA, and the red value will be 0, green value will be 0, black value will be 0, and the alpha transparency will be set to 0.5. And now let me just save my file. So now inside this div, what do we have to do? We have to create a div with the class of background wholly white, and I'm going to also specify padding all around of 20 pixel. And now let me just close there, and inside this div let's just provide our h2 model title, and now underneath there let's just create our paragraph which will say like this is a model content. And now I'm going to also provide a button, and it's going to say like close, and when somebody try to click on there we're going to be firing this function which is on close. And now let me just save there. That's totally done. Now I'm going to also go to my app and create a few things right here. So first of all we are going to be creating like is model open, and then set is model open is going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to totally false. I'm going to also create two functions, so I'll just say like false open model is going to be set to this function. It's going to say like set is model open, and it's going to set that to true. I'm going to duplicate that and change that to false, and change the function name to close model, so it's going to allow us to close our model. And now here I'll just say like h1 my amazing model, and now underneath there create our button which will just open our model. And here I'm going to also attach the on click event handler, and when somebody clicks on this we are going to be firing this on model. And here for this model we are going to be passing like is open prop, and here we have to just set that to is model open, and also on the close here we have to pass our close model function. Now let me just save my file, and let's just refresh there, and here you can see we are now getting our open model button. And now if I click on there it's going to give us that model right here. And now if I click on this close, so it's going to also close there. So you get the idea, but now the question is how in the world we are going to be extracting all of that logic to create a separate custom hook for there. So you know, let's just start working on there. I'm going to go ahead and define my hooks folder, and inside there I'm going to be creating my use model.ts file. Now let's just start working on there. So I'll just use first of all my use model, and here is going to be set to this function. And first of all we are going to be creating a state for is open, and then set is open, it's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to false. And now underneath them we have to create their two functions. So now let me just go ahead and I'm going to copy both of them and place them right here. Instead of providing this model open, I'm going to copy them and place them right here, both of these areas. I'm going to save my file right now, and finally we have to just return those values. So I'll just return like is open, and also the open model and close model like so. Now let me just save my file, and finally we have to export that so we can use that right here. So we have a use model, and now let me just save my file. So now let's just use this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my app and remove all of that stuff from here, and I'm going to be using my use model, and I'm going to restructure a few things like is open, and also the open model and the close model like so. And it's going to be coming from this use model, and now I'm gonna just paste it right here. So instead of providing the is model open, I'm gonna provide like is open right here, and I guess the rest of them will be totally fine. So I'm gonna just remove there, save my file, and now if I just refresh there and click on the open model, it's gonna still open my model right here. I can also click on this, so it's gonna make it disappear. So yeah, that was a simple hook which I want to show you. Okay, so time for the custom hook challenge. So in this one, you're going to be building 5 custom hooks by yourself, and I am not helping you in this one. You are totally on your own and do whatever the hell you want to do. I'm just kidding. So you know what, let me just explain the instruction, and then we're going to be creating all of their hooks one by one. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have to create a custom hook for the local storage, which allows us to store our data inside the local storage. Then we have to create the use fetch, which allows us to fetch our data, and then we can render that data inside our UI. And then we can create our use form for the form validation and handling, and then we have the use debounce, and this is useful for the input fields which call the API whenever we change something inside those input fields inside the forms. And then we have the use previous one, and basically it's gonna allows us to use the previous value. So give it your best shot. If you can do it, that's completely okay. Then come back and watch the solution, and here is my solution. So I'm gonna just define my hooks folder, and inside there we are going to be creating our custom hooks. So let's start from the first one, which is called the use form. So I'll just use like use form.ts, and now inside there let's just define our custom hook. I'm gonna go ahead and define my use form, and here it's gonna take the generic of t, and we also have to provide the initial value, which we are going to be doing there. But first of all, let's just create the body of there. So I'll just paste like the initial value, and I'm gonna also initial value, and I'm gonna value, there we go, and I'm gonna also annotate the as a t. And now inside there let's just define our use state. So I'll just use like the use state, and the initial value will be that initial value which we are now taking as a parameter, and I'm gonna also type that as a generic. So we're going to be getting the values. So let's just write like values and then set values out of there. I'm gonna save this file right now, and here we have to create a function which allows us to handle the input change. So I'll just create a function with the name of handle change, and it's going to take the event, and I'm going to also annotate the as a react. First of all, let's just even get there, then we have a change event, and I'm going to be using there on the HTML input element. And now let's just annotate our component like so, and inside there we are going to be using our set values and pass our object which will take all of the values like the copy of the initial values, and then we can use the event.target.name, and then for the value we can use the event.target.value from there. Okay, so let's just save this file, go back, and now the next thing that we have to do is that we have to create a function which allows us to submit our form. Okay, so let's just use like const and then handle submit, and it's going to be equals to this event object, and we have to pass the react form, come on, form form event from the React.js. And now we can just say like event.prevent default and execute there. And we can also just log to the console this data, and I guess that's going to be it. And now underneath there we have to return all of that data so that we can use them in other files. So I'll use like values and then handle change and handle submit. I'm gonna save this file right now, handle submit it. It should be with 1t, there we go. And now finally we have to export this. So I'll use like export default and then use form. I'm gonna save this file right now, close this file to my app, and here inside there let's just use that. So the first thing that I want to do is that I want to use my use form. Okay, so let's just import there, and now we are going to be passing the initial value of username, which will be set to empty string. I'm going to also pass the email, and which will be also set to empty string. And now let's just store there inside, or let's just destructure a few values from there. So let's just destructure the values and also the handle change and also the handle submit. I'm going to save this file right now, go back, and now here I'm going to just remove there and provide my class names, and I'm going to just say like pairing for all around will be set to 4, and inside this div I'm going to just write h1 which will say like custom hooks in action or something like that. And now underneath there we are going to be creating a div which will have the class of margin for the bottom of 4, and inside this div we are going to be defining our h2 which will have the classes of text extra large and form handling example. There we go, save our file. Underneath there we have to create our form, And now we are not going to be providing any action today, but we are going to be providing the on submit. And whenever we want to submit there, so in that situation we're going to be firing this function, which is a handle submit, which we already defined. And now inside this form we have to define our a few input fields. So I'll just provide the type of text. I'm going to also provide the class names, and let's just provide our border, padding all around of 2, margin for bottom of 2, and the name will be set to username, and also the value will be coming from the values dot username. I'm going to save this file right now, and whenever we want to change this, so we want to fire this handle change function, and here we also want to provide the placeholder which will say like username. I'm going to save this file right now. And can we even collapse there? No, we can't. So I guess I'm gonna have to duplicate there one more time. So let's just duplicate there, change. We are not going to be changing, yeah, we are going to be changing there to email, and also the name to the email, and change the values to the email. And I guess that's going to be fine, but we also have to change the placeholder to email, and then we would have our button which allows us to submit our form. So I'll just use like button and submit. Come on, submit. And here inside there I'm gonna pass the type of submit to there, and for the class name I'm gonna pass the border and padding all around of 2. Let me just refresh there, and this is how our form looks like. And I can just type my username like Hussein webdev, and then Hussein, or not Hussein, even test at gmail.com. and if I click on there, it's going to give us the value inside this console log, which is an object, and now we are getting the email and also the username. So that's totally done. Let's just close there. Next we have to define or use debounce. So I'm going to just collapse there and go to my custom hooks and define another hook which will be the use debounce.ts. B-O-U-N-C-E. Yep, the spelling is totally correct. So I'll use like use debounce. It's going to be taking this t as a generic. We are going to be also passing a value which will be taking that t, and the delay will be set to a number, like how much we want to delay there. So now inside there we have to define our state. So I'll use like debounce, B-O-U-N-C-E-D, I guess D-E-B-O-U-N-C-E-D, debounce value, and then set D-E-B-O-U-N-C-E-D value, set debounce value, and the initial value will be now set to totally that value which we're now getting from that perimeter. But we're going to be also providing this type generic. So let's just save our file, and now underneath there we have to use our use effect so that we can fetch some data or provide some sort of a side effect inside there. So let me just go ahead and provide my set timeout, and here inside there we are going to be passing our arrow function which will be using that set debounce value, and now we are going to be passing that value inside there. And for the delay we're going to be also passing that delay which is now coming from this perimeter, and I'm going to also store the inside the handler variable. So handler, and it's going to be equals to this value. Now underneath there we have to just return our arrow function for the cleanup, and let's just pass our clear timeout and pass my handler inside there. Okay, so now for the dependency array we are going to be passing the value and also the delay inside there, and that's totally done. But why in the world we are now getting these errors? It shouldn't be text, it should be just a t. There we go. And finally we have to just return this debounce value so that we can use that in other files. Okay, so let's just use like return debounce value, and finally export default, and then use debounce, save our file. But I'm gonna go to the top right now, and I guess that's gonna be fine. So now let me just close there and use that inside our JSX. Now underneath there we're going to be defining yet another div, and I'm gonna provide like margin for the bottom of 4, provide my h2 which will have like text of extra large, and it's gonna say like debounce input element or example would be fine. Okay, so now underneath there let's just define our input field which will have the type of text, and we're going to be also providing a classes of border, padding all around of 2, and now we have to take care of the input value. So I'm gonna go to the top right here and define my input value initially. So I'll use like use state, and the initial value will be set to empty string. And now let me just restructure the input. Come on, the input value, and then set input value, and which will be coming from the use state. Now we are going to be providing that specific value for our use debounce. So I'll use like use debounce. Let's just grab there. Now we have to pass that input value which we are now taking right here. Now we have to pass there, and we can also specify the delay of 5 seconds or 5 milliseconds rather. And I'm going to be using const and then debounced input, and it's going to be equals to this use debounce. I'm going to now go in there and define yet another hook which will be called the use previous hook. So I'll just give it the name of like use previous, and .ts, and this should be quite simple and easy, so I'll just give it the name of like use previous IOUS. There we go. And then name should be, come on, use PREVIOUS. there we go. So the name is now totally fine. We also have to annotate the as a generic, and it's going to take the value of t, and now inside there we have to first of all get the reference. So I'll just use the ref. It's going to be equals to the use ref right here, and the initial value will be set to nothing. And I'm going to also annotate the as or type generic, and inside there we are going to be performing the side effects. So now let's just pass our use effect inside there, and for the dependency array we are going to be only passing that specific value inside there. And I will use like reference.current value, which will be now equals to this value. I'm going to save this file right now, and I'm going to also use return reference.current value, save this file, and finally we have to export that so that we can use that in other file. Okay, so I'm going to save this file right now, and that's already done. Now we have to use that inside or not even inside the JSX, but now we have to use that right here. So I'll use like use previous value, and I'm going to be passing my input value inside there. Now let me just store the inside the previous value or something like that. I'm gonna save this file, but the spelling PREVIOUS, yep, that's totally correct. Now let me go ahead and go to my JSX and provide my value inside there. So I'll just go ahead and my value, and which will be set to input value. And whenever we change this, we want to fire this handle change function, or handle input change, rather handle input change, which we are going to be creating in a few seconds, and the placeholder will be set to type to debounce. There we go. Save our file, and now underneath there let's just create our paragraph, which will say like debounced value, and here let's just render our debounced value, not even input field, debounced input, and also the previous input, so previous value, and here let's just render our previous value right here. Now let me just copy the name of there and go to the top and define my handle input value. So I'll just use like const handle input change, and it's going to take the event, and I'm going to also annotate it as the react change event. And here I'm going to just specifically mention that we want to use the HTML input element inside there. And now inside there we are going to be using the set input value on set input value, and provide my event.target.value inside there. That's already done, but now let me just check this out. If I type something inside there like Hussein, here you can see it's going to take a bit of time, like the 5-second or the 5 millisecond to complete there. So now let me just type something else like I don't know, and here you can see it's going to take that 5 millisecond to complete that whatever I'm typing right here. Okay, so yeah, that was our debounce. And now let's create our use local storage, but I'm gonna have to hide this one. Then we're going to be able to provide our new JSX. I'm gonna go to my hooks and define my use local storage. So use local storage.ts, and inside there we have to just use our use local storage and provide my generic first of all, and provide the key, which will be set to a string. I'm gonna also provide the initial value, value, and that's going to be also set to this generic type. And the first thing that we have to do is that we have to define our state. So I'll just give it the name of like value, and then set stored value, and it's going to be equals to the use state, and the initial value will be set to this arrow function, because we are going to be providing our items and also our try and catch blocks. I'm going to also annotate that as a generic of t, and inside there we are going to be using our try and catch blocks. So if we have some sort of error, so in this situation we are going to be using console.error, and I'm going to just pass my error inside there and return my initial value right here. But if that's not the case, so in that situation we are going to be using our window.local storage. This is how we are going to be accessing our local storage. And now if you want to access a certain, so in that situation we are going to be using our get item function or method, and now we can specify our key inside there. So if you want to get there, I'll just store that inside the item variable. And now we have to check. Let's just save our file, and I'm going to check like if we have the item, then we can use the json.parse. And now let's just pass our item inside there. But if that's not the case, we are going to be using that specific initial value inside there. That's totally done. So now let me just hide there right here. And now underneath this state, we are going to be using our set value. So set value, and it's going to be taking the value and the t generic. Inside there, what do we have to do? We have to call our try and catch block once again. If we have some sort of errors, in this situation we are going to be using console.error and pass my error inside there. But if we don't have the error, so I can use like set stored value and pass my value inside there, and now I can use like, come on, window dot local storage dot set item and pass the key and also the json dot stringify and paste the value inside there. I'm gonna save this file right now, and I'm going to also hide there, and underneath there we have to just return those values so that we can use them in other places. So I'll use like come on, stored value and then set value. There we go. And also you want to get there as the constant. So this is basically the TypeScript stuff. Now we have to export there so that we can use there in other file. So I'll use like export default of use local storage, and I'm gonna save this file right now. Now let me just close this file and go to my JSX, and now underneath this one we're going to be defining yet another JSX, which will be set to div with the class of margin 4 or bottom of 4, and inside there let's just use our h2, which will have the classes of text extra large of local storage example. Save this file, and now underneath there let's just create our input field with the type of border not border, with the type of text, and also the classes of border, and it should be border and padding all around will be set to 2, and the value which we are now going to be providing, and it's gonna also have the placeholder of set local storage. I guess that's gonna be fine. Save my file. Now let me go to the top and define my local store variable right here. So I'll just use local storage and pass like the username as the initial value, and for the next perimeter we are not going to be passing nothing today, but now we have to destructure the stored value. Come on, stored stored value, and also set stored value out of there like so. Now let me go to the bottom, and here let's just provide those input values. So I'll use like value, and it's going to be set to stored value, and now underneath there whenever we want to change this, in this situation we are going to be finding this function and set stored value and paste my event.target.value inside there, and I guess that's going to be fine. So let's just save our file. Now let me just refresh this. So we only have this input field which allows us to set our item inside our local storage. So I'm going to go to my application. First of all, go to the application. So we already have this data. I'm going to clear this out. So we are now inside this local storage, and now inside there we have our local storage totally open. Just type like my own name, maybe like Hussein or Hussein like so, and now if I just refresh this browser, still we are now getting this Hussein. Like no matter how many times I refresh my browser, still we are going to be getting this data. So if you want to change that, so I can totally change that to something else. Now it's going to also change there right here. If you want to delete there, we can just click on this icon. So it's going to remove there, and now if I just refresh, and that data is now successfully gone, and I can type whatever I want to type. So it's going to also store that inside our local storage right here. So that's totally done. I'm going to also hide there right here, and the final thing that we have to do is that we have to create another hook for fetching our data. So I'll just give it the name of like use fetch.ts, and inside there we are going to be fetching our data. We are going to be also taking care of the loading and also the error thread. So I'll just use like use fetch, and it's going to take the t as a generic and paste my URL of string inside there. And here let's just take care of the data which we are going to be getting from the external API and set data. Now here we have to use the use state, and the initial value will be set to totally null, but we also have to annotate the st or the null value. And now underneath there we can just take care of the loading. So let's just use the loading, and set loading is going to be equals to this use state once, not transition, god damn it. So use state once again, and the initial value will be set to true, and I'm going to also annotate there to boolean like so. And I'm going to also take care of the error state. So I'll use like error and set error, and it's going to be equals to this use state once again, and the initial value will be set to null, and we can annotate this, so either use string or null value inside there. Okay, so that's totally done. Now we are going to be performing the side effects. So in this situation we are going to be using the use effect, and inside there we are going to be performing our side effect. So if you want to fetch our data, so we are going to be using our asynchronous function, and here inside there we are going to be performing our try and catch blocks. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to store the inside the fetch data function, and it's going to be equals to this function. Okay, so I'll use my try and catch blocks. So for the try block, or you know what, for the catch block, if you have some sort of error, I'm going to also annotate the as any, and I'm going to use like set error which we already defined up above, and now we can use that same error dot message and we can push that to our messages. I'm going to also provide the finally state. So finally, the set loading is going to be set to false. Okay, so now for the try block, what do we have to do? We have to first of all use the await and then fetch and paste my URL inside there. Okay, so now we can store the inside the response variable like so. It should be a response. There we go. If we did not found the response, or if we don't have response.ok, in this situation we have to throw a new error which will say like network response was not okay. This is our file, and now underneath it we have to use our result, and it's going to be equals to this type generic like so. And now we are going to be getting that value. We have to convert that to the JSON response, and now underneath there we can use the set data and paste my result inside there, and that's totally done. Now let me just copy the name of this function, and we have to execute that right here so that we can see all of that results. So I'm gonna just, you know what, let me just even collapse that. I can't even see that. Let me just collapse that and execute this function right here. And for the dependency array, we are going to be passing for the dependency array we are going to be passing that URL right here. And now underneath that we can just return our data and loading and also the errors so that we can see them. Finally, we have to export them so that we can use them in other files. So use fetch, save my file. Now let me go ahead and go to my app.tsx, and here we can use my margin for the bottom of 4. Inside there we can use the h2, which will have the class of text extra large, and provide my fetch data example. I'm gonna go to the top and get my items or my entire data from my local or custom hook. So I'll just use the use fetch, and here we have to just pass that same https and then JSON placeholder dot type icode and then .com/post. And now we are going to be just restructuring a few things like data, loading, and also the error from this use state. Okay, so now let me just save my file. Getting this error because we have to use the. So now underneath there we are going to be providing our loading state. So if you have the loading state, in this situation we are going to be showing this paragraph, and which will say like loading ... And now underneath there we are going to be also using the error. So if you have the error, in this situation we have to use like error and then just render that specific error so that we can see that. And if you have the data, so finally just render that data inside, not the pre. What the hell am I doing? Inside the pre, there we go. And I'll just pass my json.stringify. Oh my god, there we go. So we have our json.stringify and paste the data, and now and2. And now let me just save my file and refresh this. So here you can see we are now getting all of that post, and we have the user ID, then the title, and then the body. So this is how we are going to be fetching our data, and this is looking cool. Now let's talk about the factory design pattern. So the factory design pattern is a way to create objects without specifying exactly what kind of objects we are creating. It's like having a factory that makes object for us based on some condition or inputs. Instead of just directly deciding which React component to render inside your app, you will have a factory function that decides which component to create based on some condition like props or data. So this is how the basic syntax will look like. First of all, we are just going to be creating a simple component, and inside there we are going to be using either if and else statement or switch in cases, and we are going to be providing different cases, like if the case is primary, so render one button; if the case is secondary, then render another button; or if the case is danger, then render the danger button. Okay, so this is how we are going to be creating our factory function, and then this is how we are going to be using them inside our app. So we will just specify first of all the type, then the label, and then the function of what to do with that button. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So now let's get into the coding, then you will get to know what I'm talking about. Now let's talk about the factory functions. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a folder with the name of components. I'm going to also create yet another folder for the shared. You don't have to create this folder if you don't want to do that, but I want to do that. So inside the components folder, we are going to be defining our primary button.tsx file, and I'll use my arrayfc inside there. I'm going to also define yet another component for the secondary button.tsx, and I'll use my arrayfc inside there. I'm going to also provide the danger button, so I'll use like danger button.tsx. and I'll use my RAFC inside there. Now let me go ahead and go to this primary button, and I'm going to remove this div from here, and I'm going to define my button with a class of background totally teal of 300, and also padding all around will be set to 4, and I'm going to also give it the class of button primary. You don't have to provide there, but I want to provide there. It's going to also take a label, and I'm going to also annotate that label as a string. Okay, so let's just annotate there. I'm going to save my file, and now let's just use there inside this button. So I'll just put this label right here. Now let me just save my file and close there. I'm going to also go ahead and go to the secondary button. I'll just remove this line of code, and I'm going to provide my button with a class of background totally purple and 300. I'm going to also provide padding all around of 4 and button totally primary, and inside there I'm going to specify my label. So I'll say like label, and here we have to specify the label and string. Okay, so inside there I'm going to render that label right here, and that's done. I'm going to also go ahead and go to the danger, and once again we are going to be removing there. So let's just remove there, and I'm going to provide my button with a class of background totally green, or you know what, red would be fine, red of 300, and also padding all around will be set to 4, button totally danger. So now inside there I'm going to destructure the label once again, and I'm going to provide the label, and it's going to be a string. Okay, and here let's just render over label. Okay, so I'm going to be using like label, and now let me just save my file, and now these buttons are now totally done. The next thing that I want to do is that I want to define my button factory. So I'll use like button factory.tsx, and now inside there we are going to be creating our component, or we are going to be rendering our component based on a certain condition. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to specify my button factory, and it's going to take a type, and type will be set to string. It's going to also take a label, and label will be also set to a string. So inside there we are going to be using our switch and cases, and for the switch we are going to be providing a type, and for the first case if the type is primary, so in that situation we are going to be returning our primary button. Okay, so I'm gonna just close there, and for the prop we are going to be specifying that label right here. There we go. I'm gonna also remove this break, and now let me provide yet another case. So if the case is set to secondary, in that situation we are going to be rendering our secondary component like so, and I'm gonna also specify a label inside there, and for this label I'm gonna also provide that label which we are now taking as a parameter. If that's not the case, and if the case is set to danger, so in that situation we are going to be returning our danger button, and now let me just close there. And here I'm going to also provide the label, and for the label we are going to be specifying that label as a parameter, and for the default value let's just remove our break, and I'm going to be returning just a simple button with a label. Okay, so let's just provide our label inside there. Now let me just save my file, and this is how we are going to be defining our factory function or our factory component for our button factory. So I'm going to copy a name of them, and I'm going to just export them so we can use them in other file. Okay, so let's just go ahead and go to our app, and now let's just use the inside our component. So I'm going to just remove them. Let me just zoom in a bit, and here we are going to be rendering our button factory component. Let's just grab them, and here it's going to take the type, and it's going to also take the label. So for the type, you know, let's just define this type right here. Okay, so I'll use like button type, and it's going to be equals to primary. So this can come from the prop, or this can also come from the stat sometime, but in my case I'm just only providing that as a variable. So now underneath there I'm going to also create a button label, and you can specify basically any label that you prefer, but in my case I'm going to say like click me. Okay, so let's just provide our type first of all. So now let me just provide their type. I'm going to also provide the button label, and now let's just close there. I'm going to go back, and this is how it looks like right here. So if I right click on there and go to the inspect element, and what are we getting? We are now getting this button primary right here, and also this background of totally teal 300. And why is that? Because now we are setting this button type to primary. That's why we are now getting this button primary right here. And if I change that to like secondary, here you can see the button color is changed, and we are also getting this button primary. And we shouldn't be getting this primary, we should be getting a secondary. Let's just go ahead and go to our secondary, and it should be secondary like so. I'm gonna also go to the danger, and yeah, that's fine. Okay, so yeah, we are now getting our button secondary right here. And now if I change them to danger, so now let me just change that to danger, and now if I save my file, and here you can see we are now getting our danger button right here, and also we are now getting this class name of button danger. So that was example